It all begins at the Great Snow Mountain, where all 9 great sects have gathered. Someone watching from afar notices that numerous grandmasters are present, remarking that everyone came fully prepared, since their opponent is that mysterious man. He adds that although they seem eager to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, they likely harbor hidden motives. The girl asks what he means by that, and he explains that what everyone truly desires are the man's overwhelmingly powerful martial arts. He points out that those calling themselves noble warriors are no different from the rest, noting they arrived too late and that the man will not walk out of there alive today. The girl wonders if this is simply the bad karma of a cursed slayer, but the man asks if she truly believes that. She recalls that the villains he defeated, such as the Rakshasa Witch, the dark-faced Asura, and the Dream Master, were downright monstrous. Yet, he did not eliminate only evil people. She mentions that renowned figures like the Lone Blade of Sichuan, the Black Lion, and the Sword Saint sect were nearly wiped out by him. The man explains that, following that devastating purge, the Sword Saint sect had to shut its doors for the next 10 years. He asks whether the warrior truly deserves to be struck down for that, and she replies yes, since he took the lives of many innocent people. The man smirks beneath his straw hat, remarking that he has his doubts about whether those people were truly innocent. He reflects somberly that a flawless outward appearance never guarantees an uncorrupted soul. Amidst a grim battlefield, an injured man wakes up on the ground, disoriented and wondering where he is. He feels utterly confused by his surroundings as people begin shouting furiously, branding him the blood demon. The young man wonders if they are referring to him, while an elder accuses him of being a depraved scoundrel who abandoned justice. The old man yells with rage that the demon will finally answer for drowning the entire Jianghu in endless conflict. Facing his imminent end, he begins to recall blissful moments beside the woman he loved dearly. The man also fondly remembers his little daughter, sleeping peacefully right next to them. He finally remembers how simple, yet extraordinarily joyful, his life used to be alongside his beloved family. Unfortunately, that happiness was cut short when his wife passed away from a mysterious illness. To make matters worse, their home was completely destroyed in the middle of a brutal turf war between martial artists. In that tragic fire sparked by the fighting, his innocent daughter lost her life in a cruel fashion. After that, he lived solely for payback, taking down every single corrupt martial artist across all sects. He brought down countless rotten warriors who crossed his path to avenge the terrible loss he suffered. The martial world labeled his crusade a reign of terror and began calling him the dreaded blood demon. He finds this entire situation to be a sick joke, seeing as nobody ever cared about his daughter's life. Overcome with fury, he questions what sin an innocent child could have ever committed to deserve such a tragic ending. He declares that those hypocrites are the ones who must pay, while the grandmasters prepare to surround him in the snow. Abbot Muhe questions how the true successor of the martial god could cause such utter destruction without feeling an ounce of shame. Showing no regret whatsoever, the warrior calmly replies that he simply did what needed to be done. He explains that everyone he took down was absolute trash who deserved to be wiped out, infuriating one of the leaders with his sheer audacity. The Prota screams with raw fury, calling every warrior present a pack of hypocrites. He accuses the group of covering up each other's crimes just to pin the blame on him, questioning how they dare consider themselves pure and righteous. One of the emperors listens to the accusations in dead silence, maintaining a deadpan cold expression. The Blade Emperor gets ready to strike, but another master stops him, reminding him that their foe has mastered a legendary divine technique. They start arguing about capturing him alive to claim the secret manual, annoying the monk with their blatant greed mid-battle. Watching that pathetic dispute over power, the Prota feels absolute disgust toward those men. He realizes that all their talk of justice is pure nonsense and that they only care about serving themselves. Sick of their hypocrisy, he grips the hilt of his blade tightly and decides to finish every single one of them off. With his energy glowing intensely, he vows that not one of those men will walk out of there alive. The clash finally erupts with an overwhelming blast that forces his opponents to back away in terror. The Blade Emperor's eyes widen as he registers the crushing force of the strike he just took. Moving with lethal, lightning speed, the Prota begins slicing through his adversaries one by one with zero mercy. He executes a devastating spinning slash that blankets the entire area in flames and destruction. More warriors collapse onto the freezing ground as red stains the pristine white mountain snow. Covered in the aftermath of the clash, he challenges the survivors to come at him with everything they have got. The remaining leaders left standing just stare in horror, completely at a loss on how to counter him. One of the surviving fighters screams in rage at the Prota, charging straight at him with full momentum. He barks that the blood demon will not make it out of here no matter what, while another master joins in for a combined strike. They unleash their most devastating techniques, generating a massive shockwave of energy to crush their opponent. The Prota merely offers a cool smirk, making it clear he is not even remotely concerned. He channels his own immense aura, setting up a devastating counterattack. The two attackers instantly freeze, their expressions turning to pure dread as they feel the raw power rolling off him. The collision of their arts triggers a massive blast across the frozen mountain ridge. One of the opponent's weapons goes flying through the air, burying itself deep into the snowdrifts. The red-robed master is sent crashing hard against the boulders, thoroughly bested and gravely wounded. He groans in agony, struggling to keep from collapsing onto the snow after taking a direct hit. Clutching the nasty wound across his torso, the man laments as he realizes the true majesty of the martial god's divine art. The white-haired master looks on in awe, admitting that the blood demon truly lives up to the hype. Right then, the white-haired warrior blurs into motion, positioning himself to strike the Prota from behind. He closes in with absurd velocity, his spear aimed straight for the young man's neck. The Prota dodges the razor-sharp spear tip at the very last fraction of a second with pinpoint accuracy. The attacker is stunned by how effortlessly his strike was evaded, deciding to kick things into high gear. With a wild grin and flashing eyes, he asks how the Prota likes his follow-up assault. The two trade high-speed blows, generating sparks that cut through the mountain's freezing chill. The white-haired master flashes a cocky grin, convinced he holds total control over the duel. He unleashes a vicious burst of blue energy in an attempt to overpower the Prota once and for all. The shockwave forces both fighters apart, leaving the Prota at a disadvantage on the downward slope. The Prota coughs up a heavy amount of blood, revealing that exhaustion and injuries are starting to take their toll. His opponent casually walks up and mocks him, pointing out that the blood demon looks utterly drained. He notices the Prota is running low on energy and offers to spare him if he gives up the location of the martial god's manual. Leaning on his sword, the young man quietly admits to himself that he has indeed depleted nearly all his spiritual reserves. Even so, he refuses to throw in the towel, swearing that failing here is out of the question. Suddenly, the white-haired warrior senses something off and retreats in shock at the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The Prota begins channeling a brilliant, intense golden energy straight through his own blade. He makes the desperate call to burn his core life essence for one final monumental surge of power. The remaining masters panic as they sense that monstrous aura, terrified that he intends to take everyone down with him. The lead elder screams for everyone to strike immediately before he can even make a move. However, it is already too late, and a colossal crimson explosion swallows the entire mountain peak. The sheer force of the blast obliterates everything in sight, shattering stone and snow alike. The Prota stands there with dark crimson staining his lips, his entire body covered in critical injuries. With wide eyes and a body pushed past its breaking point, he feels that his journey has finally reached its curtain call. He loses his footing and begins plummeting from the icy cliff down toward the bottomless abyss. As he falls, he deeply regrets that he only needed one more year of life to fully avenge his fallen family. He closes his eyes in sorrow, whispering a heartfelt apology to his dearly departed wife. In the darkness of the fall, a glowing golden hand mysteriously reaches out toward him. His hand, his wife's, and his little daughter's intertwine in a warm, comforting light as he apologizes for failing to protect them. Right when he thought everything was over and his time had come, something truly unbelievable happens. He feels a warm, tiny hand holding his, hearing the sweet voice of his daughter calling out to him. The warrior snaps his eyes open in shock, finding himself in a cozy bed with his daughter bouncing on his chest to wake him up. He sits up abruptly, completely stunned, unable to process that he is looking at his little girl alive and well. At that moment, his wife walks into the room with a glowing smile, playfully asking if Daddy is finally awake. The little girl lets go of her father and happily sprints right into her mother's open arms. Tears stream down the man's face as the reality hits him. He has actually traveled back in time. He realizes he has regressed to a period when his beloved wife and daughter were still healthy and thriving. Outside the modest cottage, the day is bright and sunny, with the little girl running around and calling for her dad. The girl proudly shows off a flower crown her mother made for her, absolutely thrilled in that peaceful moment. Several days pass, and the Prota still finds it hard to believe that all of this is genuinely happening. He was dead certain he had perished, constantly wondering if this reality is genuine or just a hyper-realistic illusion. However, he knows the righteous sects would never resort to such a craft, completely debunking that theory. With a subtle smile on his face, he begins to entertain a completely different possibility. He seriously ponders whether he actually turned back the clock to rewrite his tragic fate. Watching his daughter play joyfully, he knows that if history repeats itself, this piece will be cut terribly short. The little girl runs happily toward her father, who catches her in his arms with overflowing tenderness. Seeing his daughter's radiant smile, he makes a solemn vow that he will never let those past tragedies happen again. With that in mind, he realizes he needs to take care of a top priority mission before doing anything else. His wife hands him a bundle of food for the road, reminding him to eat well during his 2-week journey. He apologizes for leaving out of nowhere, but she tenderly backs him up, wishing him a smooth trip and a safe return. Little Soil peeks shyly from behind her mother, asking if she can tag along on Daddy's trip too. Kneeling down, he explains that he has urgent business to attend to, promising to bring back treats if she behaves and waits for him. The girl beams with excitement and tells her dad to take care, making his heart feel infinitely lighter. With his pack slung over his shoulders, he takes his first steps, kicking off this critical journey. The young man casts one last confident glance over his shoulder before heading out for real. Walking down the tree-lined dirt road, he repeats to himself that he will not lose his family a second time. The proto recalls a crucial detail. Only his soul managed to return to the past. That means all the overwhelming power he possessed as the blood demon has completely vanished. To protect the ones he loves, he knows he urgently needs to reclaim a level of strength capable of tearing down any obstacle. He finally arrives at the entrance of a dark, eerie cave nearly smothered by overgrown vines. The young man carefully crawls inside, navigating an extremely tight and pitch-black passage. He remembers there was a very clear reason why a simple scholar like him originally turned into the feared blood demon. In a world teeming with top-tier martial masters, there was a secret reason he was able to wreak such absolute havoc. The core secret behind his legendary might was the martial god, Hyuk Jong-hoo, regarded as the greatest martial artist in history. And that was all because the Prota was the only person in the entire world who ever uncovered his resting place. He recalls being relentlessly hunted in the past, with enemies barking that he had dared to ambush the sect leader. Back then, gravely wounded and desperate, he dragged his battered body across the freezing dirt. With tears in his eyes, he used to curse himself for being so utterly weak and powerless to do anything. He was tormented by the agonizing truth that he lacked the strength to even scratch the man who took his precious daughter's life. Following that tragedy, he tracked down the culprits who burned his village and finally uncovered the true mastermind behind it all. However, since he was just an ordinary scholar at the time, he possessed zero power to claim his vengeance. While running for his life from those ruthless foes, he stumbled upon this exact cave by sheer luck. Fortunately for him in this new timeline, he manages to pinpoint the secret hideout once again without breaking a sweat. The young man tenses up, wondering if the phenomenon he encountered back then will trigger the exact same way now. Right before his eyes, a glowing orb of mystical energy begins hovering right between the skeleton's hands. The mystical aura expands rapidly, blazing with brilliant golden flames that light up the entire cavern. The remains of that ancient legend seem to have safeguarded this incredible power for centuries, waiting for the right moment. He finds it mind-blowing how that energy sphere revealed itself in the past, as if it had been waiting for him all along. The man reveals that the entire martial legacy and internal prowess of the legendary martial god are sealed inside that compact glowing sphere. Full of resolve and eyes shut tight, the Prota decides it is time to take the decisive step to rewrite everything. Reaching his hand toward the radiant orb, he firmly declares that he is ready to restart his path to ultimate power. The mystical force begins funneling into his body, wrapping him in an overwhelming blazing aura. The golden sphere sinks directly into the young man's chest, initiating the transfer of the ancient legacy. The sheer agony of the absorption is brutal, making him grunt in pain as he fights tooth and nail to stay conscious. He tells himself the metamorphosis has begun and that he must endure this agonizing trial just like he did in his previous life. The young man lets out a raw scream of pain, reminding himself that he must push through to gain the strength to shield his family. Meanwhile, crows circle above a desolate, ruined landscape radiating pure, unadulterated danger. Elsewhere, a beaten warrior lying on the ground warns his opponent that this clash is far from over. Sporting a twisted, manic grin, the white-haired man sneers, promising that darkness will soon blanket the world once again. He continues his ominous prophecy, stating that when the day of reckoning finally arrives, everything will change. He guarantees that the true domain of shadows will swallow everything and everyone in a catastrophic wave. Suddenly, the ominous vision snaps shut with a violent flash of crimson and a flock of crows scattering in panic. The Prota's eyes snap open, utterly startled by the intense vision he just witnessed. He gasps heavily for air, his heart pounding like a drum as he tries to compose himself on the cave floor. The young man realizes he blacked out, wondering how long he remained unconscious after absorbing that much raw power. He ponders how that chilling vision felt far too vivid to simply be a random nightmare cooked up by his mind. Looking at the skeleton of the martial god, he wonders if those glimpses were actually the ancient master's past memories. He admits that nothing feels quite normal ever since his regression, but decides to lock in on what truly matters right now. He notes with satisfaction that he pulled it off again, successfully absorbing the martial god's techniques and restructuring his physical vessel. The warrior remembers that he previously only unlocked the second stage of this art, but this time he must go way beyond to protect everyone. Suddenly he looks down at himself and notices with disgust how filthy he ended up after the process. Seeing his clothes reduced to rags, he decides to change before heading back, chuckling at how much easier things are the second time around. Now dressed in crisp blue robes, he adjusts his pack and gets ready to leave the grotto. Before stepping out, the young man offers a deep, respectful bow in sheer gratitude to the master who bestowed such immense power upon him. He sincerely thanks the ancient grandmaster for entrusting him with this sacred art once more. He promises to wield this strength to keep his family safe and to honor that generosity with everything he has got. With firm, purposeful strides, the young warrior finally steps out of the damp, dark cave. Stepping into the daylight, he feels the crisp breeze against his skin and locks onto his main objective. With sharp focus and quiet confidence, he takes a deep breath, knowing it is prime time to head back home. He launches forward with supreme agility, putting his newly acquired martial skills to work at breakneck speed. The force behind his jump kicks up a massive cloud of dust and swirling leaves in his wake. The young man glides through the air with effortless grace, leaping across the treetops like a breeze. Blazing across the scenic mountain ranges, his mind races with excitement to get back to his hearth. The Prota picks up the pace even more, singularly focused on reuniting with his waiting wife and daughter. The surrounding landscape displays untouched natural beauty, with lush green peaks giving off a tranquil vibe. However, he realizes with concern that he ended up losing 2 extra days during his training inside the cavern. Wearing a deadpan look, the young man knows he needs to sprint flat out to make up for lost time. Meanwhile, in peaceful Sodom village, the locals are going about their simple everyday routines. One of the local villagers spots the Prota's wife and daughter, greeting them with warm enthusiasm. A cheerful vendor waves energetically, welcoming the sweet little girl tagging along with her mother. Nearby townsfolk shower the pair with compliments, talking about how adorable and full of sunshine they are together. A merchant completely melts at the sight of the little girl, showering her with sweet words while tending to her stall. As a reward for being so well-mannered, the merchant offers a sweet candied fruit skewer to the thrilled little girl. Sporting a giant grin, the little one happily thanks her for the delicious treat she just received. She takes a huge bite and cheerfully remarks how yummy it is with her cheeks full, making the vendor smile. The mother expresses her gratitude, but the shopkeeper looks worried, suggesting they head home early today. With an uneasy look, the merchant whispers that it is almost time for a dangerous crew to roll into the area. She is talking about the violent thugs who extort ridiculous protection fees from the village. An elderly local tries to stand his ground, calling it pure extortion and stating they do not need fake security from street punks. The thug leader's expression turns sour, getting extremely ticked off at being called a street punk by an old-timer. Overcome with irritation, the crook grips his blade's hilt and threatens to cut the elder down right then and there. The village chief and surrounding neighbors instantly panic upon sensing the imminent danger. Desperate to avoid a catastrophe, the villagers beg for mercy and guarantee they will cough up the demanded cash. The elder swallows his pride and pleads with the man to cool off and spare everyone in the village. Pleased with the extorted loot, the thugs stroll away, laughing, casually taunting that they will be back real soon. As the criminals chuckle arrogantly, the locals help the poor old man get back on his feet. The Prota's wife feels deeply anxious about the whole thing, praying that nothing bad has happened to her absent husband. Sensing the thick tension in the air, she decides to cut the trip short and calls her daughter so they can head home immediately. A gust of wind rustles the leaves heavily, bringing an ominous gut feeling that trouble is lurking very close by. The little girl watches the falling leaves and thoughtfully calls out for her daddy. Her mother takes her hand, and the two continue their stroll back under the clear blue sky. They walk quietly along the dirt path, completely unaware of the dangers creeping around the region. Perched high up in a nearby tree, the Prota observes everything in complete silence with laser focus. Meanwhile, one of the thugs tosses the stolen coin pouch up in the air, laughing at how heavy it feels. He brags to the boss that small-town spots like this are always gold mines for easy, quick cash. The lackey callously suggests enslaving the men and trafficking the young women once they finish squeezing the village dry. Suddenly, the prota drops right in front of the group, coldly remarking that their conversation sounds mighty fascinating. The criminals halt in their tracks, startled by the young man who seemingly materialized out of thin air. Annoyed by the sudden interruption, the bandit ringleader demands to know who on earth this intruder is. With a dark, menacing glare, the young man calmly states that he is giving them one single chance. He demands they turn right around, return the stolen money, and apologize to the villagers on the spot. The lackeys burst out laughing at what they consider pure comedy coming from a lone young guy. One punk steps up with a smirk, asking who would have thought this one-horse town had its very own superhero. Poking the young man's chest with a finger, he chuckles that the supposed hero is the one who needs protection around here. In the very next split second, the prota lands a lightning-fast strike that shatters the punk's nose instantly. The thug stumbles backward, howling in agony, his face completely mangled by the punch. The boss and the other lackey freeze in utter shock at the absurd speed of that sudden assault. The man drops cold to the dirt while his buddy screams in horror, seeing his brother out like a light. Blindsided by rage, the companion draws his weapon and lunges forward at full throttle, yelling at the young man. He leaps toward the prota with the clear intent to deliver a fatal strike. Without twitching a single other muscle, the young man simply clenches his right fist tight. He connects a devastating punch square to the attacker's jaw, launching him backward with sheer force. With his eyes glowing a dangerous crimson hue, the prota coldly laments the foolishness of those men. The bandit leader collapses on his backside, trembling in sheer terror upon seeing his goons dismantled so effortlessly. The boss realizes in dread that the young man struck vital points with surgical precision and speed impossible to track. Breaking out in a cold sweat, he wonders in pure panic who this monstrous young man really is. The criminal stammers, asking for the young man's identity, to which the prota begins to answer in a slow, calm drawl. He simply introduces himself as the humble teacher responsible for showing the local kids how to read and write. The villain's eyes pop open upon hearing that he is now the sole remaining survivor of that crew. Looking down on him, the young man coldly asks what the boss plans on doing moving forward. The bandit leader tosses the coin bag back, leaving the village elder utterly baffled without a clue as to what is going on. The crook drops to his knees, pressing his forehead into the dirt to desperately beg for forgiveness. He even offers to strip down to his skivvies to prove his sincerity, freaking out the elder, who turns down the bizarre gesture. The thug bolts like a madman, swearing he fulfilled his end of the bargain and will never set foot in that village ever again. The villagers watch the spectacle, completely unable to grasp the reason behind such a sudden and cowardly turnaround from the thug. In reality, the villain had been forced to do that by the prota, to whom he is now reporting on his knees deep in the woods. The criminal trembles in fear, pleading to know if he is finally cleared to leave and save his own skin. However, the young man gives him an icy stare, asking where on earth he thinks he is going in such a rush. The man insists he plans to run as far away as possible to live a quiet life, giving up crime for good. The prota repeats his words with dripping sarcasm, finding humor in the notion of a crook looking to settle down peacefully. The young man stays silent for a few beats, making the forest atmosphere even more suffocating and tense. With a frosty gaze, he directly asks if the bandit honestly believes that rotten people can ever truly change. The young man reveals he knows they are deserters from an evil faction, leaving the man utterly paralyzed by that revelation. The prota recalls that in his past life, this very gang raided the village and sold all the locals into human trafficking. Even though the Murim Alliance punished the perpetrators later on, Sodom Village's peace and safety were already ruined for good. He resolves to himself that these scumbags must pay a heavy price for the atrocities they committed back then. The bandit chief screams in terror as the prota states that some wicked people simply never change. He finally puts two and two together, realizing in despair the grim fate that awaits him in that dark forest. The man realizes far too late that the young man never had the slightest intention of sparing him from the get-go. Back home, little Soil plays intently on the floor while waiting for her father to return. Suddenly, she hears footsteps coming closer and looks toward the doorway with a beaming smile. The prota walks through the gate, calling for his daughter, who immediately rushes into his arms for a warm hug. He picks her up, asking if she was on her best behavior, while his wife appears at the door, surprised by his arrival. She asks with concern why he took so long, checking him from head to toe to see if he got hurt in any way. The young man apologizes for worrying her and quickly improvises an excuse, claiming there were more students than expected seeking his lessons. Little Soil playfully jokes that she will give him a smack if he is late again, while the mother breathes a sigh of relief that he did not run into the criminals. However, looking at her husband up close, the wife begins to notice some rather unusual changes in his physical appearance. She touches his face, intrigued, asking why his skin is glowing so much, leaving the prota completely flustered. She keeps inspecting him, remarking that he seems taller and broader in the shoulders, while the young man nervously tries to change the subject. He realizes that while he concealed his aura, hiding the physical upgrades brought on by divine energy was flat out impossible. The wife gives his cheek a firm, playful tug, dead set on getting to the bottom of the whole thing. She smiles with a terrifying aura flaring around her, demanding to know what he was actually up to during those weeks away from home. Sweating bullets, the young man stammers, unsure what kind of excuse to pull out of his hat to dodge the intense grilling. Luckily for him, a loud, awkward rumble from his starving stomach immediately diffuses the tension. The wife drops the interrogation and looks on in amusement, realizing her husband is famished after his long trek. She cannot hold back her giggles, cracking up at her husband's hilarious predicament. She asks if he has had anything to eat yet, while their daughter tugs her dad inside, insisting they need to have dinner right away. She figures he must be hiding something, but trusts him nonetheless and invites him in for a bowl of delicious beef soup she whipped up. He smiles with relief at the warm invite, agreeing that the soup sounds amazing, and follows the two inside. However, the prota suddenly freezes in his tracks as he picks up an odd vibrational frequency coming from his wife. He locks his gaze onto her hands, noticing something deeply alarming that puts him on maximum alert. The young man spots subtle purplish discoloration near his wife's fingernails, instantly recognizing the telltale signs of a terrible affliction. A horrifying thought crosses his mind, and he wonders in absolute dread if his beloved wife is actively being poisoned. Later that night, once his wife and little girl are sound asleep in bed, he decides to make his move. Watching her sleep in that state brings back painful memories of how his life fell apart in the past because of that very illness. He remembers with agony that she endured that exact same slow, excruciating pain in his previous timeline. Carefully, the young man channels his mystical spiritual aura, projecting it directly over his beloved's chest. Analyzing her energy flow up close, he confirms with absolute certainty that she has fallen victim to a slow-acting poison. The warrior notices that the bulk of the green toxin is gathered near her core, though it does not seem to have been there for very long. Grasping the severity of the situation, he decides to pour all his spiritual strength into expelling that vile substance from her system. He carries out the procedure with surgical delicacy so as not to damage any of his wife's fragile energy pathways. The process is a resounding success, and the young man manages to draw out all the toxic greenish vapor that was eating away at her health. He condenses the extracted toxin into a tiny, glowing green orb in his palm to trace its exact origins. With a furious look in his eyes, he recognizes it as a lethal venom designed to cause prolonged agony before claiming its victim. Suddenly, a terrible realization dawns on him. He wonders if he was simply blind to the poisoning in his past life. He concludes that the village doc could have never spotted it, and that his wife's past demise was not due to an illness, but straight-up murder. Remembering she is a daughter of the renowned Peng clan and a trained martial artist, he realizes the mastermind must be an elite operative. With eyes burning with pure hatred, the young man swears to obliterate anyone who dares threaten his precious family. The following morning, the wife cheerfully announces she is heading out with Little Soil to pick up some essentials at the local market. The prota waves goodbye, wishing them a pleasant walk, and watches them happily head down the village path. The moment they disappear from view, he decides it is time to get moving and investigate this entire conspiracy. Lurking behind a tree in the forest, a shady scout flutters his folding fan and notices in utter shock that the poison symptoms are completely gone. Watching them from afar, he starts wondering if he made some rookie mistake in the dosage or the application of the compound. Either way, the villain convinces himself he will patch up the issue, confident that nothing will derail his Shadow Master's grand scheme. Suddenly, the prota's voice rings out right behind him, startling the traitor out of his skin with his sudden presence. The spy leaps back in total panic, stunned that he failed to sense the approach of the young man, who coldly calls him out as the culprit. Maintaining an imposing, icy demeanor, the prota demands the traitor answer just one simple question. The young man demands to know who gave the order to poison his wife, leaving the villain spooked by how fast he was found out. With a twisted grin, the spy pulls a sharp dagger, promising to spill the beans right before taking the meddlesome husband out of the picture. The villain yells in anger that the woman betrayed his master first, making the prota curious about who this mastermind might be. getting ready to lunge. The henchman decides to drop the name behind the whole plot. He charges in wildly, shouting that the proto will only get his answer once he is 6 feet under. However, the young man stands completely still, his sharp gaze locked onto the incoming trajectory of the strike. With superhuman reflexes, he catches the dagger's razor-sharp edge midair, using only 2 fingers. The assassin's blade shatters into pieces under the sheer pressure of the young man's fingers. The criminal's eyes pop open, completely unable to process that his lethal attack was neutralized with such casual ease. Wasting no time, the proto lands a crushing punch right on the enemy's jaw. The punch packs such monstrous force that the villain is sent flying backward, snapping tree trunks along the way. He slams hard against the rocky forest floor, spitting blood and groaning in agony. With calm, menacing footsteps, the young man slowly closes the distance to the defeated scout. Looking down on him, he coldly repeats his question, demanding the name of the mastermind behind the hit. Shaking with terror, the henchman stammers that the mastermind is none other than the eldest young master of the prestigious Sichuan Tang clan. Hearing that name, the proto's expression turns even darker and more focused. He instantly recognizes the name Tang Guhui, the heir who operated in the darker corners of the martial world. That clan is globally infamous as the premier authority on hidden weapons and deadly poisons across the realm. The young man wonders why the heir of such an influential faction would specifically target a daughter of the Ping clan. The captive explains it was common knowledge that the young master harbored an unhealthy obsession with the proto's wife. The clan had even tried to force an arranged marriage, but the young lady ended up eloping in the dead of night with a humble scholar. The young man recalls that back then, all they wanted was to pursue their love away from heavy family pressure. He knows full well that a penniless orphan like him would have never been accepted by such a prestigious martial house. With how things played out, the villain undoubtedly believed the proto had ruined all his grand marriage prospects. Even while understanding his motives, the young man fumes at how anyone could carry out such twisted cruelty. The henchman desperately begs for his life, claiming he has already spilled everything he knew about the whole scheme. The proto coldly asks why he should spare him, while the villain tries to threaten him, warning he will make an enemy of the Tang clan. He yells in panic about the clan's wrath, but the young man calmly replies that he is already well aware of that. He quotes a famous saying that the Sichuan Tang clan never forgets a debt, whether it is a favor or a blood feud. The warrior counters that debt collection works both ways, driving the prisoner into pure panic. The criminal tries to shout one last threat, but the young man grabs his face with a crushing grip. Leaning in close, he whispers with an icy tone that he needs to make one final detail crystal clear. With his eyes glowing a dangerous crimson, he states that this is simply the settlement of a very old score. Channeling his overwhelming spiritual energy, he decrees that the enemy must pay the ultimate price for his deeds. A moment later, silence returns to the forest, with only fresh drops of blood dripping from his hands onto the earth. Looking toward the horizon, he decides that a very quick trip to Sichuan province is in order. Meanwhile, at the Blue Blossom Pavilion in Sichuan, the courtesans comment on the heir's fantastic mood. Tang Guhui chuckles, confirming that something very good indeed went down, enjoying the perks of his lavish setup. One of the ladies curiously asks what the occasion is, and he decides to make an exception to share his twisted metaphor. He says there was a very special flower he had long admired, to which the courtesan praises his supposed romantic side. With a sinister look reflected in his drink, he confesses that his only true desire was always to own and control that flower. He reveals his sick urge to mercilessly crush that vibrant flower he so desperately wanted by his side. He used to daydream about what kind of agonizing look she would have and how much sick satisfaction that would bring him. Even though he could not have her in the end, he says with a grin that his wish will come true in another way. He mentions he finally tracked her down after her escape and now plans to inflict unforgettable torment upon her. With a manic grin, he reveals he made secret arrangements to ensure his target suffers a slow and agonizing fate. The villain suddenly chokes the frightened courtesan with force, venting all his sick aggression right onto her. He whispers cruelly, asking how much it hurts to have her breath slowly cut off, leaving the woman gasping and panicked. Suddenly, a booming voice echoes through the room, cutting off the heir's sadistic fun as he turns to see who arrived. 2 towering, intimidating bouncers, hauling heavy iron chains, enter the pavilion, commenting on the young master's playtime. Showing immense respect, Tang Guhui lets go of the woman immediately and offers a courteous bow to the newcomers. The leader of the giants laughs in a friendly tone, suggesting they should all share a round to celebrate such an important day. The heir mentions he set up a private room so they can discuss the future of Sichuan province together. On the inside, however, the young master feels sheer disgust toward those men, viewing them as absolute bottom feeders. He knows they are ruthless mercenaries who would do anything for cash, though he privately admits they make very handy tools. He invites them to sit, thinking he needs more capital to solidify his standing and make sure nobody ever looks down on him again. Suddenly, a flashback shows the villain's younger brother trying to stop him from going out due to their mother's deep concern. Ticked off by the intervention, the eldest brother yells, accusing his sibling of using their mother as an excuse to lecture him. The younger brother tries to explain with a sad look, but the older one tells him to shut his mouth, saying he is sick of hearing him call him brother. That younger brother is Tang Mujun, widely regarded as the greatest prodigy the clan has ever produced in its entire history. Because of his immense talent, the younger brother shoulders all the grand expectations of both the former patriarch and the current clan head. The firstborn accuses his younger brother of acting like the entire clan belongs to him ever since their father entered secluded cultivation. Shaking off those jealous thoughts, he decides to focus on toasting his own future as the next head of the family. The cups clink together in celebration of the sinister plot that is about to fall right into place. With a manic grin, the young master toasts to the fact that the clan's leadership will soon rest entirely in his hands. However, the party is violently cut short as the ceiling completely shatters to pieces right above their heads. One of the villain's bodyguards comes crashing down through the roof, smashing hard against the drinks table. Pure panic breaks out across the floor as the courtesans shriek and the two giants leap up on high alert. The white-bearded master instantly clocks that they have an uninvited and extremely dangerous visitor on their hands. Looking through the settling dust, they spot a masked man standing calmly amidst the destruction. The prota steps forward slowly, remarking that while he already knew they were trash, he did not expect them to be this pathetic. Intrigued and irritated by the intruder's brass, the young master asks if the masked guy actually knows who he is dealing with. The young man firmly answers yes, calling him the single most shameful stain on the history of the Tang clan. The heir loses his cool over the insult, but one of the giant fiends chuckles loudly, remarking that the masked guy picked the worst day to crash the party. The white-bearded master offers to take out the intruder personally so they can keep their business running smoothly today. The two giants stride toward the young man and taunt him, saying they might spare him if he gets on his knees and starts begging. With complete calm in his eyes, the masked young man bluntly replies that he passes on that offer. The dark-bearded giant bursts into arrogant laughter, claiming the kid's bravado is going to earn him a painful ticket out. Wasting no time, the giants launch their heavy chains tipped with spiked iron flails at blinding speed. They push forward with pure aggression, promising to snap every single bone in the masked intruder's body. The two move in total sync, leaping together to deliver a crushing tandem strike. The spiked iron flails whistle through the air with a menacing hum, right on track to pulverize their target. The massive impact shatters the pavilion's wooden flooring, throwing up a dense curtain of dust and debris. The giants stare intently at the crash zone to confirm if they successfully squashed their opponent. The white-bearded master notices the young man dodged the lethal hit at the final millisecond, praising his nimbleness. The dark-bearded brute changes his tone as well, acknowledging that their target has some seriously impressive footwork. Suddenly, the prota appears suspended high in the air right above them, priming his counterstrike. In the blink of an eye, he closes the gap, grabbing the dark-bearded giant's face with absurd, crushing force. With his eyes glowing a dangerous crimson, the young man whispers that this guy is just the first domino to fall. He uses his own body's momentum to drive the giant headfirst straight into the floorboards. His grip on the opponent's skull is so ironclad that it completely shuts down any attempt at defense. With one devastating motion, the young man declares that the first giant is officially out of commission. The giant's head smashes violently against the floor, sending a shockwave rippling out that spatters the area. The white-bearded master freezes in absolute horror upon seeing his partner get taken down with a single strike. He screams in grief for his fallen comrade, while the prota lands lightly on his feet right in front of him. The young man ignores the survivor's enraged screams, remarking that even the wildest beasts mourn when one of their own goes down. Driven by sheer hatred, the surviving master grinds his teeth so hard the veins pop along his temples. He pours all his spiritual energy into the iron chains, making them glow with an intense azure aura. The big guy roars with all his might, spinning his lethal weapons right toward the intruder. He swears to avenge his fallen brother by shredding the prota to pieces with his heavy iron chains. The ferocious attack rips across the entire banquet hall, tearing up whatever wooden structures were left standing. Yet, the masked young man stays on his feet with complete composure, watching the chains hurtle toward him without flinching. The white twin grinds his teeth in pure malice, stammering with rage as he glares at the Prota. Letting out a monstrous roar, he hurls his colossal chains across the room with everything he has got. Tanguy watches the clash in sheer shock, unable to comprehend how the white twin is getting clowned on so easily. He knows the white-bearded master is strong enough to carry half the reputation of the twin demons, yet all his moves are being read like a book. Feeling the danger up close, Tanguy realizes he needs to get the heck out of there right now. But his train of thought is suddenly cut short when the Prota snatches the heavy iron flail out of the air with a single hand. The masked young man catches the weapon, effortlessly, leaving the giant completely paralyzed on the other end of the chain. The old-timer realizes with dread that his internal energy has stopped circulating, wondering if he has completely lost the fight. Panic sets in as he realizes he is getting thoroughly handled by someone who looks so young. The Prota coldly states that the giant's ultimate sin was placing zero value on human life. The young man yanks the chain with tremendous force, stating that this is the reckoning. With a grim look, he declares that this is precisely why the white-bearded master is going down right here and now. The giant's eyes pop open as he sees the lethal flash flying right at him with zero time to guard. The iron flail slams into the old man's face with brutal violence, causing him to choke on his words before the final blow. The crushing strike results in a massive spray of red that paints the pavilion floor. The lifeless frame of the second giant drops onto the wooden floorboards, closing the book on the twin demons for good. The masked young man slowly turns his head, locking his cold gaze onto the next target in the room. Tanguy gulps hard when the Prota apologizes for keeping him waiting for so long. Dripping with sweat and utterly dazed, he tries to wrap his head around the absurd scene that just unfolded before his eyes. He cannot fathom how this intruder tossed around two demonic masters like rag dolls before finishing them off. Tanguy comes to the obvious conclusion that the masked man standing in front of him is an absolute freak of nature. He starts shaking like a leaf upon realizing his opponent might be just as formidable as his own father. Trying to cut a deal, Tanguy asks how much he was paid for the contract, making the Prota let out a confused scoff. The villain says that no matter what chump change the young man got, he will double it if he agrees to work under him. The masked guy finds the offer hilarious, but Tanguy doubles down, offering triple if the cash is not sweet enough. The young man keeps walking forward, revealing that he was actually the one who put out the hit on Tanguy himself. He remembers with bitter regret how clueless and pathetic he was in the future for not even realizing his wife was fading from poison. The Prota recalls that his future self, completely consumed by the agony of loss, begged for this relentless payback. Tanguy thinks the young man has lost his marbles for talking in riddles, but suddenly pauses to think. He replays the line about the wife fading from poison and agony, and a terrifying realization hits him. The villain immediately pictures the face of Pying Seo-yeon, the daughter of the rival clan he had ordered to be poisoned. He points an accusatory finger, asking if the masked man is Pang Seo-yeon's husband, getting an immediate flat yes. Tanguy bursts into hysterical laughter, finding it unbelievable that the supposed chump scholar he planned to squash caused all this. He finds it darkly funny that this useless husband turned out to be the mastermind behind all the wreckage in the pavilion. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echo down the hall, and someone calls out for the young master, catching the Prota's ear. Several armed guards rush into the banquet room, frantically asking if their young master is all right. The bodyguards position themselves right in front of their lord, saying they will hold off the intruder so he can make a run for it. Tanguy looks at his own men with pure contempt, knowing full well those fools will be wiped out in seconds. Right then, a sinister thought crosses the villain's mind as he evaluates the situation. Since his underlings are doomed anyway, he figures he might as well use them as pawns for a nasty play. Without an ounce of guilt, he hurls his poison capsules, thinking they can take the fall while he makes his escape. The capsules detonate violently, spreading a massive purple cloud of highly toxic gas across the entire area. The guards start coughing and screaming in sheer agony, completely clueless about what is hitting them. One of the men spits blood while getting melted by the toxin, crying out in pain about why his own master would do this to them. Tanguy chuckles smugly, convinced that no martial master can ever walk away from the Tang clan's signature deadly poison. However, his smirk vanishes instantly when he looks back and freezes in absolute terror. Through the thick purple haze, the Prota's silhouette emerges completely unscathed, his eyes glowing bright. The young man snaps his energized hand forward, unleashing a powerful blast of golden wind that cuts right through the smoke. The blast of energy instantly clears out the entire toxic cloud with a deafening rumble. Tanguy is left speechless, seeing his men laid out on the floor while the Prota stands tall without a single scratch. Tang Guhui begins stumbling backward with nervous giggles, utterly incapable of grasping what is happening. With a merciless gaze, the young man tells him that this fate is far too good for him, since scum like him does not even deserve to breathe the same air. The young man recalls that the twin demons were scumbags involved in human trafficking, whom he personally put down in his past life. He knows Tang Guhui was teaming up with those monsters and backing their crimes in exchange for control over Sichuan. Completely cornered and shaking, the villain drops to his knees, desperately begging for his life. The prota charges his fingertips with energy, thinking it is now crystal clear what this scumbag's real intentions were with his wife. Without hesitation, the young man strikes the villain's chest with pinpoint blows, making him scream out in agony. The young man coldly remarks that he must be familiar with this technique that slowly dislocates bones and tears tendons apart. The villain lets out a gut-wrenching shriek of pure agony as he feels his own body getting completely dismantled from the inside out. Suddenly, several throwing daggers come flying toward the prota at breakneck speed. The young man senses the ambush coming from the flank and casually tracks the trajectory of the incoming blades. With slick, effortless movements, he swats away and parries every single projectile without getting touched. A stern voice calls out that that is enough, grabbing the masked young man's attention. It is Tang Mujun, who declares that no matter how foul his brother acts, he is still the eldest son of their family. The deflected weapons stick deep into the wooden floorboards as the two warriors size each other up. Tang Mujun presses the attack, launching another barrage of razor-sharp daggers at the intruder. The young man expertly sidesteps every single blade mid-air, showcasing mind-blowing agility. Mujun tries closing in for a direct melee strike, but the prota easily slips past the blow. With his heightened reflexes, the masked young man firmly catches his opponent's armed wrist mid-swing. Even with his arm locked, Mujun uses his free hand to whip out a lightning-quick strike with his iron claws. The two trade fierce blows in a fraction of a second, creating a massive shockwave across the hall. The force of the clash whips up a gust of wind, pushing Mujun back and forcing him to reset his stance. They square off once again at a distance, testing each other's capabilities amidst the destroyed room. That is Tang Mujun, widely celebrated as the greatest prodigy in the entire history of the Sichuan Tang clan. The prota remembers that even back when he despised so-called righteous heroes, he had to give this kid his flowers. Back during his days as the blood demon, thanks to Mujun's genuine kindness, the prota experienced the only peaceful day of his life. The young man reflects on how ironic it is to cross paths again like this, thinking it is actually good to see him. Mujun grits his teeth with resolve, realizing he is going toe-to-toe with an extraordinarily formidable opponent. The prodigy realizes with a jolt that the intruder is evading every single one of his strikes by mere millimeters. He finds it deeply puzzling, starting to wonder if the mysterious man is intentionally pulling his punches during the duel. Even knowing this might be an unwinnable fight, Mujun feels his blood pump, genuinely hyped by the challenge. Suddenly, the prota closes the distance with blinding footwork, erasing the space between them in an instant. Mujun reacts on the fly, putting up a defensive barrier of greenish spiritual energy around his body. He leaps into the air and unleashes a relentless flurry of sharp daggers straight at the masked young man. However, the prota glides through the entire barrage with supreme ease, popping up right behind Mujun. Before Mujun can even register the flank, the young man raises his hand to deliver the decisive blow. The prota chops the back of his neck with surgical precision, using nothing more than the edge of his hand. The impact completely disrupts Mujun's spiritual circulation, sending him dropping helplessly to the floor. Grounded and out of gas, Mujun simply cracks a faint smile, thinking things played out just as he predicted. He admits to himself that his skills were not even enough to hold a candle to this opponent. Even so, he scrambles back to his feet, convinced the mysterious man is playing with his food by not finishing him off. Screaming with everything left in the tank, the prodigy musters his remaining energy and charges in for one last desperate gamble. The young man simply puts his hand up and catches the incoming blades effortlessly between his fingers. He disarms the kid with a subtle flick of the wrist, showing off an absolutely crushing difference in power. The prota then steps right behind Mujun, pressing the cold steel of the blade directly against his throat. Mujun realizes his body has completely locked up, wondering if his time is truly up right here. Yet, the young man holds back from making the final cut, keeping the blade resting there and leaving the kid completely baffled. Mujun asks why he does not just finish the job, to which the prota replies that he himself is the real debtor in this whole mess. Pointing toward his battered brother, Mujun asks if all that humiliation and defeat is not enough payback for the debt. He insists his older brother is already practically crippled, asking if the intruder really needs to push things even further. Mujun adds that the Tang clan will undoubtedly uncover the whole truth about this scandal, so there is no need for further punishment. The Prota agrees to his request, bringing relief to Mujun, but quickly adds that there is one non-negotiable condition. The young man says that while all that makes sense, there is still one specific thing he really cannot stand. The young man makes it clear that he will not tolerate any chance of Tang Guhui regaining his martial cultivation down the line. Mujun panics instantly, yelling for him to wait as he senses the worst coming. But the Prota moves too fast, slamming an open palm strike straight into the villain's core to permanently seal his power. Gui coughs up blood, writhing in agony, as the devastating impact completely shatters his cultivation base. The villain's core is pulverized beyond repair, shutting down any hope of recovery for good. The firstborn lets out an ear-splitting howl of despair as he realizes he has lost his martial arts forever. Mujin rushes over in a panic to his fallen brother, who is weeping in pure agony on the wooden floor. The younger brother apologizes to his elder, pressing his pressure points to try and soothe the blinding pain. The villain eventually passes out from exhaustion and pain, foaming at the mouth with his body thoroughly broken. Mujun asks if he really had to take it that far, and the Prota asks if he honestly thinks that was an overreaction. The young man then asks where Mujun was and what he was doing while this brother was running around committing evil across the land. He points out that Mujun likely only put on a show of trying to stop him, never truly stepping in to shut down his villainy. The Prota bluntly states that in his eyes, Mujun is nothing more than a silent bystander to the whole tragedy. He adds that rotting away with a crippled body is only a tiny fraction of the price the villain rightfully owes. Mujun tries to stammer out a defense, but finds himself completely at a loss for words against the young man's point. A gust of wind sweeps through the wreckage, leaving the young prodigy in utter shock at what kind of monster he just faced. He stares into the open air, terrified thinking about what kind of absurd beast his brother ended up provoking. Later that night, under a star-filled sky, the Prota sits deep in thought on the edge of an isolated mountain cliff. The young man closes his eyes and takes a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts following the intense clash. He somberly looks back on his actions, realizing a heavy weight still lingers in his chest. The young man laments that despite having stained his hands with so much of his enemy's blood on this journey, he still feels guilty for letting such a close call happen to his beloved wife once again. Clenching his fist tight, the young man wonders what he must do to protect her with absolute perfection this time. Meanwhile, in the quiet bedroom back home, Yule and little Soil are sleeping peacefully in bed. Yule begins to stir awake as she feels the soft, familiar touch of a caring hand on her shoulder. The Prota apologizes for waking her at such an ungodly hour, asking if they could have a quick chat. Seeing her daughter sleeping like an angel beside her, Yule warmly agrees to step out and talk with her husband. Under the soft glow of the full moon, the young man reveals that he has something very important to share with her. The two step out onto the porch, and Yule playfully admits with a smile that this late-night talk is creeping her out a little. Her eyes widen slightly as her husband's firm hands gently rest on her shoulders. With a tender yet resolute gaze, the young man asks that they pack their bags and head back to Hebei province. The night breeze whispers through the trees around the house as his proposition hangs in the air. Yule looks taken aback by the sudden shift in plans right in the middle of such a peaceful night. She stares at him with wide eyes, trying to figure out what sparked such a drastic decision from her partner. He takes her hands tenderly, gently pressing the idea that they truly need to return to Hebei. Yule repeats the suggestion out loud, still unable to wrap her head around what she just heard from her husband. She explains that they cannot do that, since her father would never forgive her for running out on the family in the past. She adds with a heavy heart that he definitely would not make life easy for them if they decided to show up again. The young man tries to reassure her, saying he will be fine and that her father must still miss her deeply. She sadly looks away, remarking that she considers herself a blot on her father's record and that he has likely erased her from his memory. Holding her hands tight, the young man asks her to hear him out, confessing that he used to think the exact same way. He recalls that her father, Ping Mugong, was vehemently against their marriage, swearing he would never sign off on it. In his previous life, the young man believed until the very end that the old man would never forgive them for running off together. However, not long after Yule's tragic passing back then, the dreaded father-in-law showed up unexpectedly in Sodom Village. That legendary warrior, widely feared and celebrated across the realm as the Blade Demon of Hebei, cradled the lifeless body of his beloved daughter in his arms and wept uncontrollably in sheer grief and regret. On that sorrowful night, he apologized to the Prota, lamenting that this entire nightmare was the fault of his own stubborn pride. Back then, the old man practically begged the Prota to send Soil to the Ping clan, promising to raise her with all the love in the world. However, the young man turned down the offer at the time, insisting on raising his precious daughter all by himself. But it was not long before he bitterly regretted that choice every single day for the rest of his life. That is why, upon turning back the clock, the young man swore to himself that he would never make another decision he would regret. He realizes that right now, they urgently need the safe haven and backing of the influential Peng clan of Hebei. The young man asks his wife to think about her father, claiming that no matter what happened, he could never truly forget her. He argues that any parent would spend all their time worrying about whether their child is safe and doing well, on top of missing her like crazy every single day, exactly as Yule's father does in secret. Yule listens to her husband's words in silence, her heart wavering in the face of such raw sincerity. The young man acknowledges that the father-in-law must be boiling mad, but guarantees that anger is not the whole story. He looks into Yule's eyes with tenderness, saying he believes every parent in the world shares that very same feeling. A single tear rolls down the young woman's cheek as the deep truth behind her husband's words hits home. He jokes that his father-in-law probably does not consider him family anymore, coaxing a soft chuckle out of her. The Prota hugs her tight, asking her to trust him that everything will work out, to which Yule finally nods in agreement. With the decision made together, they finally get ready to head back to Hebei province side by side. The next morning, birds chirp merrily on the roof, signaling the start of a brand new day. Little Soil strikes a goofy, proud pose while clutching a dark object in her tiny hands. She holds the black ink stick firmly, ready to pull off another one of her classic little pranks around the house. Yule has a blast helping her daughter draw all over the Prota's face, giggling as she points out where to apply more ink. The young man slowly opens his eyes at the touch on his skin, groggily mumbling as he wakes up. He asks what the two are up to, but they quickly play it off, claiming it is nothing out of the ordinary. Yule sweetly tells her husband to hurry and get up for breakfast, and he thanks her while rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He notes that he slept like a rock, feeling that the choice to return to Hebei brought a massive wave of relief, even knowing what awaits him. Seeing the table packed with food, the young man compliments the spread, while his wife playfully explains she just tossed the leftovers together. But as he sits down, the mother and daughter cannot hold back their laughter, looking at his thoroughly scribbled-on face. Yule giggles, saying she got a little carried away, and tells her husband to go wash his face before eating for real. The two keep cracking up as they watch the young man scramble toward the washroom in a hurry. The young man jumps when he catches his reflection, but Yule apologizes through her laughter, while he reassures his daughter that the doodle actually looks pretty cool. Shortly after, the sun shines bright over all of Sodom village, lighting up the community's scenic mountain backdrop. The local villagers are taken aback and saddened by the news that Yule's family is actually packing up and leaving. The couple expresses their deepest gratitude and apologizes for the sudden departure, while the neighbors beg them to stay. One neighbor remarks that the area has gotten way safer recently, ever since all the local thugs mysteriously vanished. The village elder says they were all blessed to have the family around, wishing them safe travels on their long journey ahead. The young man thanks the elder, bids farewell to everyone, and sweetly tells his little girl to wave goodbye to the folks. Little Soil gives an adorable little bow, waving goodbye to all the neighbors with a bright, sunny smile. Hand in hand, the little family begins making their way toward the village exit under the fond gazes of their neighbors. The Prota reflects that the only moments of genuine happiness in his previous life were the days he spent right here. Even as he leaves, he quietly promises to come sprinting back to help the village if anything ever happens down the road. He sincerely and deeply wishes that all the warm people of this community stay happy forever. Meanwhile, over at the Peng clan manor, the council debates turning down a cooperation request sent by the Murim Alliance. The debate at the council table gets heated among the elders, who butt heads over which path the clan ought to take. Suddenly, a heavy fist slams violently onto the wooden table, commanding everyone to pipe down immediately. The patriarch of the Peng clan, Peng Mugang, takes the floor and asks for the take of his heir, Jin. Peng Seo-jin calmly replies that since the duty of the Orthodox Murim is to keep outside factions in check, they should cooperate. One elder argues that giving an inch will invite worse demands, but Seo-jin reassures him that this is precisely why they should do it. He explains that acting in line with righteousness prevents enemies from using excuses against them, showing sharp political savvy. Bursting with pride, Peng Mugang praises his son for displaying such a deep grasp of the Jianghu's rules despite his young age. The young man humbly bows his thanks, showing the textbook composure expected of one of the Murim's future shining leaders. Suddenly, the doors swing wide open, and a palace guard rushes in, desperate to deliver an urgent report. Peng Mugang furrows his brow, asking gruffly what happened, while the breathless messenger nervously struggles to spit it out. The young heir, Peng Seojin, looks surprised to hear the word young lady uttered by the guard. The messenger then announces at the top of his lungs to the whole room that Lady Pying Seoyeon has just returned to the clan. Hearing his daughter's name, Patriarch Peng Mugang grinds his teeth, splintering the heavy wooden table under the pressure of his hand. With a terrifying scowl on his face, he coldly asks who on earth the guard just said came back. Meanwhile, over at the grand and imposing headquarters of the Sichuan Tang clan, another crucial meeting is underway. The clan head asks if it was his eldest son who orchestrated everything alongside the twin demons, and Mujin somberly confirms it. The leader of the Tang clan, Tang Jinwoo, deeply laments, stating he failed miserably in raising his son. Jinwoo had to break his closed-door meditation due to Guhui's core being destroyed, and asks if the culprit managed to get away. Mujin explains they planted a tracker on the intruder, but the leader tells him to drop it, pointing out the man dismantled the twin demons. He firmly states that for someone with that absurd level of martial prowess, trying to track him is an exercise in futility. Mujun then asks his father if he truly plans on letting this outrageous situation slide without doing a single thing. The Grandmaster replies that while the Tang clan never forgets a debt, be it a favor or payback, things are different now. He sternly declares that above all else, today's Sichuan Tang clan needs to learn some basic shame for its own actions. Back at the Peng clan manor, someone knocks gently on the door of the guest room where the little family is waiting. Sitting at the table, Yule nervously calls out to her husband as the door begins to slide open. She turns quickly with teary eyes of emotion upon hearing a familiar voice call her sister. It is her younger brother, Peng Seojin, who greets her warmly, asking if she has been keeping well all these years. Radiating sheer joy and a huge smile, she rushes over to welcome her dear younger brother. She hugs him tightly, remarking on how much he has grown, while he happily asks if she has been doing fine this whole time. Next, Seojin respectfully greets the Prota as his brother-in-law, to which the young man offers a friendly nod back. Young Seojin feels a light tug on his robe and glances down, looking pretty puzzled. He is floored to spot the little girl, and Yule happily introduces her as Soil, his niece, telling her to say hello to her uncle. Little Soil looks up with her huge, sparkling eyes, adorably trying to stumble through the word, uncle. The young man completely freezes, turning into absolute mush after being called uncle for the first time by that bundle of cuteness. Thoroughly smitten, Seojin asks if he can hold her in his arms just once, and Yule gives him the green light with a smile. Suddenly, the matriarch of the Peng clan, Dan Huiyong, bursts through the door, calling out her daughter's name in a wave of emotion. Yule gasps in surprise seeing her mother, who rushes forward in tears, calling her a heartless daughter for staying away for so long. The mother asks how she could just vanish like that without sending a single word, while Yule weeps and apologizes against her shoulder. In her uncle's arms, little Soyul watches the scene with concern, asking why her mommy is crying like that. Yule wipes her tears to reassure her daughter, while the matriarch spots the little girl, asking who on earth she is. Yule introduces the child as her granddaughter Soyul, telling her to greet her grandma, who looks at her with overwhelming affection. The matriarch gently reaches out, softly patting her little granddaughter's head. With a warm smile, she remarks through tears that the girl looks like the spitting image of her mother at that age. The two lock eyes for a moment, sparking an instant bond of pure family love right then and there. The Prota quietly watches the whole thing from the back, feeling a wave of relief seeing the warm reception his wife is getting. The young man offers a respectful bow, sincerely apologizing for the delay in paying his respects and taking the blame for all the worry caused. Yule watches her husband's humble, respectful gesture with emotion, anxiously waiting for her mother's reaction. The matriarch sighs, wisely noting that it takes two hands to clap, acknowledging that her daughter must have loved him dearly. She smiles softly, telling them to get some rest after their long trek, receiving sincere thanks from her son-in-law. However, the peaceful moment is shattered by a furious roar from outside, booming that this is completely out of the question. A heavy pair of boots stomps into the room with loud, deliberate thuds. Peng Mugang storms in, carrying an intimidating aura dripping with raw authority. The Prota gulps hard, facing his enraged father-in-law for the very first time in this timeline. He calls his daughter pathetic for running away, asking if this modest lifestyle was the grand destiny she ran off to find. Yule looks him dead in the eye with resolve, firmly asking what is so wrong with the life she built. She explains she left to forge her own path away from the clan, admitting that despite the tough days, she pulled through. The young woman states she was truly happy every step of the way because she was finally living life on her own terms. She challenges him on whether he is going to judge her purely on appearances, which only fuels the old master's temper further. He barks back, asking if she realizes the clan became a laughingstock because of her foolish crush, while the matriarch tries to step in. But the matriarch grabs his arm, giving him a stern look and asking what his real purpose was in marching into this room. She scolds him loudly right in front of the kids, forcing him to drop the tough guy act. The young heir, Seo Jin, looks on in shock, spooked to see his mother chewing out their formidable father so openly. She smacks his shoulder, asking why he spits words he does not even mean, leaving the legendary warrior stammering comically. His wife reveals that Mugang did not sleep for months after their daughter ran off, crying in her empty room in secret, making the old man cough in sheer embarrassment. Completely mortified by his parents arguing in front of everyone, a blushing Seo Jin begs them to wrap it up. The matriarch then tells her husband to drop the drama and go hold his gorgeous granddaughter, leaving Mugang totally baffled. She points to little Soyul in her son's arms, telling the girl to give her granddad a nice, sweet greeting. The little girl looks at the burly, white-bearded warrior, asking in a tiny voice if he is her grandpa. The feared hero of Hebei freezes on the spot, completely melted by the overwhelming cuteness of his granddaughter. He points comically at little Soyul, wondering to himself what kind of impossibly adorable little creature this is. Little Soyul repeats the word sweetly, making the proud warrior's heart practically float up to cloud 9. His wife nudges him, telling him to snap out of it and hold the granddaughter who is asking for a hug, breaking his trance instantly. He hoists the girl high into the air with a giant smile, leaving the couple deeply relieved by the heartwarming sight. Shortly after, the prota is called in for a private sit-down with his father-in-law in the main hall. The two sit across from each other over tea, kicking off a very serious conversation they both knew was coming. Taking a sip from his cup, Mugang begins to look back on the past and how his daughter rebelled against his rules. He recalls that Yule firmly stated her love for the young man, even though he had prayed she would make a different choice. Back then, Mugang was crushed when his men reported that she had packed up and left the clan behind for good. Blindsided by anger, he swore to drag her back by force the second his scouts tracked her down. However, when he finally located her, it was the first time in his life he had ever seen his daughter look genuinely happy. He admits he hoped she would forget clan duties and just be happy, never expecting she would ever decide to come back. Humbly, the prota bows his head, offering his sincere apologies for everything he put the father-in-law through in the past. Mugang asks if that means he regrets his actions, but the young man firmly denies it, saying he has zero regrets about his choice. The young man states his family is his entire world, and he would do it all over again, leaving Mugang curious as to why he apologized in the first place. He clarifies that he is apologizing for the worry caused, but stresses that he no longer wants his wife living estranged from her own kin. He adds that he wants his daughter to know the rest of her family, making Mugang take note of how much the young man has matured. With steady eyes, the prota states he is ready to do whatever it takes to shield his family, humbly asking for the patriarch's acceptance. Mugang quietly reflects on how this once frail scholar now carries such sheer determination and weight behind his words. Letting out a thoughtful grunt, he looks away, weighing his options following his son-in-law's declaration. He muses that the real test will be how they fit into the clan, but decides to greenlight their return and grants his blessing. The young man is genuinely surprised to hear his father-in-law's official permission to move into the estate. The young man bows in gratitude, but Mugang warns him that life in the Hebei clan will be no walk in the park for a bookish guy to adjust to. With a confident look, the young man respectfully replies that he will gladly take on any challenge thrown his way. As time rolls on, the couple's quiet routine finds a brand new rhythm inside the sprawling clan territory. Tucked away in a mountainous spot on the outskirts of the manor, the prota discovers the ideal hideout to train his body. He trains relentlessly shirtless under the scorching sun, focusing on leveling up his potent golden internal energy. A full month has already passed since they set foot in Hebei, and his training gains have been downright staggering. The young man notes that his strength is climbing at a far faster clip than in his previous life, and that he will soon eclipse his old peak. Even so, he knows full well that it is still way too early to reveal his true identity and power to the world. Gazing at the manor from the cliffside, he reinforces his vow to grow even stronger to keep his family safe. Over in the Peng clan training grounds, the morning shouts of the disciples ring out loud during their drills. A few disciples grumble and gossip about the prota, annoyed that the smiling bookworm rubs them the wrong way. They start brainstorming ways to mess with him when another clan member walks up, asking what they are whispering about. The newcomer is squad leader No Il Bong, who sneers, asking if they are talking about that scholar guy again. The guys complain that the outsider's son-in-law is cocky and has zero pedigree, insisting they need to teach him he does not belong here. No Il Bong flashes a sly grin, agreeing that they ought to give the busybody a proper reality check, their way. Later on, the Prota is approached by No Ilbong and looks surprised to be invited to join their morning workout. The squad leader puts up a front, claiming he just wants to bond with the newest family member since he is always cooped up studying. The young man taps his chin thoughtfully, while the other disciples eagerly cross their fingers that he takes the bait. The Prota cheerfully accepts the invite, and No Ilbong sets the meetup for the next morning at the crack of dawn. The young man casually walks off, while squad leader No Ilbong watches his back with a shady plan brewing. He snickers to himself, thinking the clueless scholar has no clue the clan's morning jog is fondly known as the run from hell. The leader gleefully plots to show the intruder what a real nightmare workout looks like starting tomorrow. The next morning, the disciples gather in the courtyard, chatting about whether the guy will actually have the guts to show up. They complain that he needs to pay for taking the young lady away, but worry the chicken might just bail on them. No Ilbong remarks that if he flakes, it just proves he is a total coward, but suddenly spots him strolling into the courtyard. The Prota walks in cool and composed toward the pack of disciples who were eagerly waiting for him. The young man politely asks if he is running late, but No Ilbong puts on a fake smile, saying he arrived right on the dot. He asks who the other men are, and Ilbong explains they are squad leaders, who greet him with phony friendliness. The young man suggests kicking off the run right away, catching the leader off guard with his eagerness as he quietly curses the scholar. With everyone lined up, No Ilbong gives the starting signal, smugly wondering how long the new guy will last. The entire unit of disciples begins jogging in sync across the Grand Manor's stone courtyard. They run shirtless, showing off their solid builds and stamina, totally used to the clan's grueling routine. No Ilbong sneaks a glance over his shoulder, expecting to see the bookworm already gassed and begging for a breather. But he is stunned to see the young man cruising with absolute ease, sporting a light smile and keeping pace without breaking a sweat. The leader thinks it might feel easy right now, but the real grinder is about to kick off. They start tackling a brutally steep mountain trail, where the leader silently hopes the young man collapses from exhaustion. As they push up the hill, fatigue starts setting in, leaving several disciples wheezing hard from the sheer strain. The disciples begin to suffer under the absurd intensity of today's run, silently begging someone to rein the leader in. Suddenly, the Prota cruises right past No Ilbong with absurd speed, leaving the squad leader completely flabbergasted. The leader struggles to process the scene, baffled by how a humble scholar who only reads books can have such insane lungs and speed. He breaks into a heavy sweat, terrified as he realizes the young man is not showing a single sign of fatigue and is setting the pace. The leader cannot wrap his head around how a regular intellectual could possess such ridiculous stamina and durability. Arriving back at the manor, the exhausted disciples stop, wondering why on earth the squad leader is not slowing down. Determined not to get smoked by the young man, a breathless No Ilbong barks that they are running another full lap. The disciples lose their minds, calling the leader insane, but he barks at everyone to keep moving and quit their whining. The warriors push forward on the brink of physical collapse, their legs wobbling and their lungs burning with every step. As the extra laps pile on, more and more disciples start dropping to the ground, completely out of gas. One of the fighters cannot take the extreme strain and begins heaving on the stone floor, desperately pleading for a break. With almost every disciple laid out on the ground, the Prota casually jokes, asking how clan warriors can complain about a light warm-up jog. He chuckles, saying it is a shame the workout wrapped up so fast, since he was just starting to break a sweat, adding that he will see them tomorrow. The disciples watch him stroll off in horror, wondering what kind of beast he is, especially after he starts showing up every single day. The very next morning, the young man popped up bright and early, energized to run with the crew, sending the fighters into a panic. The grueling routine kept repeating day after day, with the young man always demanding they match the intense pace of the first run. Eventually, a completely wrecked and defeated No Ilbong shows up to officially excuse the Prota from the morning sessions. He practically begs in tears for the young man to stop coming, and word of the legendary morning runs quickly spreads across the entire Peng clan. Yule asks in surprise when his stamina got so incredible, laughingly recalling how in the past he would get winded from a short jog. The young man jokes that he has been putting in work on the low, watching his sweet daughter enjoy some treats at the table. Chuckling at the whole thing, he happily reflects that fitting into the Peng clan has been way smoother than he ever anticipated. The young man figures that even if some folks talk behind his back calling him a useless son-in-law, it is all meaningless noise anyway. He bitterly remembers his past life, where the heartbreak and isolation were infinitely more brutal and painful. Back in the moment, Soil comes running playfully into her dad's arms, teasingly whining that mommy is being mean to her. That same evening, by the estate gates, some local merchants express their deep gratitude to young heir Seo-jin. They bow low, promising they will never forget his hands-on help for the everyday citizens of the region. Seo-jin smiles modestly, replying that it is his duty to hear out the people's concerns and that he is truly honored to help out. The young man wishes them a safe trip home, reassuring them that they can always seek him out whenever trouble pops up. Walking back with his bodyguard, Seo-jin chuckles, mentioning he got a bit carried away chatting. He says he needs to hustle back since his adorable niece So-yul is waiting at home, stepping into a dark, quiet stretch of forest. Suddenly, the young master halts in his tracks and whips around, staring hard into the dense, dark tree line. With a sharp gaze and an alert defensive stance, he demands to know who is lurking out there in the shadows. Out of nowhere, the metallic ring of blades being drawn echoes through the bamboo grove. In a fraction of a second, dozens of masked assassins emerge from the darkness, surrounding the young master and his guard. Seo-jin draws his blade, tensely noting that they have been completely boxed in on all sides. A brutal clash breaks out immediately in the shadows, filled with the sounds of slashing steel and chaotic scuffles. The loyal bodyguard fights tooth and nail to clear a path, shouting for the young master to run and make it out alive. Seo-jin is forced to retreat through the woods, carrying a nasty, bleeding wound across his arm. He grits his teeth in pure pain and frustration, silently cursing the critical spot he finds himself in. The young man runs flat out toward an old suspension rope bridge hanging over the dark gorge. He realizes with dread that the hitmen are relentless, hot on his heels, leaping through the canopy. Reaching the bridge, the young master skids to a stop as his only escape route gets cut off by another foe. More masked hostiles drop onto the rope bridge, boxing him in with zero way out. Cornered right in the middle of the bridge, he bitterly curses his luck for picking the worst possible day to travel. He glances at the deep wound on his left arm, feeling his physical strength draining away rapidly. The ominous creaking of the ropes under the warrior's weight makes the standoff even more dangerous. Gripping his sword hilt tight, he resolves that fighting to the bitter end is his only real move. Blades clash violently in the dead of night, casting sparks that light up the desperate struggle. Suddenly, the assassins are caught completely off guard by a surprise strike coming straight out of the dark. Several foes get hurled off the bridge with cries of pain after taking an overwhelming hit. The Prota makes a dramatic entrance right in front of Seo-jin, casually grumbling about the tight timing of his save. A traveling merchant passing through the area noticed the blocked trail and ended up finding signs of a skirmish. The clan guards report that the escorts were taken out, but Seo-jin's body was nowhere to be found, sparking outrage. At the emergency meeting, the elders argue about hunting down the culprit, while others demand focusing on whether he is alive. Tempers flare across the main hall, but other elders step in, reminding everyone that this is no time for petty squabbling. Patriarch Peng Mugang barks for them to shut their traps and redirect all efforts toward locating his heir, Seo-jin. Meanwhile, back in the room, Yul looks worried sick, asking her husband to get some rest, though he reassures her he is fine. She hugs him tight, asking how she could possibly sleep at a time like this, terrified that something awful happened. The Prota embraces her gently to comfort her, while keeping an intensely focused mind behind his calm face. He remembers that the ambush on Peng Seo-jin actually happened around this exact time frame in his past life. The case of the Peng clan heir going missing after a surprise ambush by unknown enemies was famous back then. Although he made it back alive from that deadly ordeal, he ended up losing one of his arms completely in the attack. He warmly remembers that Seo-jin was the only person in the clan who treated him without bias, leaving a lasting impression on him. For that very reason, in this new timeline, the young man vows to do everything differently to ensure his brother-in-law gets a happy ending. In a hidden hideout, an underworld boss slams the table, stressed over the chance that the clan heir might still be breathing. He fumes that they should have finished him off on the spot, but the assassin reasons that the heir put up a fierce fight. The client warns that they need to close the job quickly if they want to collect the full payout agreed upon. The hitman points out that he put his entire crew on the line by agreeing to strike at one of the great clans. The shady broker states he never pinches pennies when it counts, and the assassin boss nods, satisfied with the terms. The assassin promises to return soon with good news on the heir's whereabouts and elimination, heading out for the night. He vaults across the rooftops in the dead of night, vanishing quickly into the dark beneath the moonlight. The assassin sprints at top speed back to the dense forest where the primary skirmish with the heir took place. Among the bamboo stalks, the killers encircle a badly hurt Seo-jin, mocking him to give up fighting for his comfy lifestyle. Bleeding and out of breath, the young master bravely asks if they honestly think they will get away with striking the Peng clan. The mercenary boss dryly replies that they will handle that part themselves, coldly unsheathing his weapon. Another masked goon walks up, addressing his chief respectfully before delivering the final strike. The goon asks for the honor of finishing the job for their fallen comrades, and the boss coldly gives the nod. The hitman slowly walks up with his sword raised, while the wounded young man desperately yells for him to stay back. The enemy swings downward with blinding speed, about to take Seojin out of the picture. Suddenly, the prota parries the strike at the final fraction of a second, telling his shocked brother-in-law that he is here to get him out. He raises his energized fingers towards Seojin's injured arm, suggesting they prioritize stopping that severe bleeding first. The young man uses his incredible golden medical technique to instantly cauterize and seal his brother-in-law's nasty wound. Peng Seojin's hurt arm begins to sting, reacting to the poison in his system. He realizes he has been poisoned, but the masked prota simply tells him to take a seat for a second. The young man starts tallying the enemies, counting 20 of them, which ticks off one of the assassins. The prota remarks that is quite a crowd, giving props to his brother-in-law for hanging tough for so long. One of the goons yells, asking if he has a death wish, while the masked young man just lets out a casual sigh. He finds it thoroughly annoying that they brought out such a massive formation just to jump a single guy. Wasting zero time, the prota shifts his stance, preparing his counterassault against the pack of hostiles. With his eyes glowing bright in the dark, he executes a lightning-quick move and charges in full throttle. The assassin in front is caught completely off guard as he realizes a devastating strike is barreling right toward him. A massive wave of force generated by the attack rips through the woods, sending enemies flying through the air. The goons howl in pain as they get blasted by the crushing momentum of that single swing. Total panic sweeps through the area as several of them start yelling while getting completely wiped out. The overwhelming assault continues to level everything around them with stunning power. Debris and red spray fly in all directions, showing off the unmatched strength of the masked young man. The prota casually sheathes his blade, taking in the aftermath of his blitz. The forest floor is left with a massive crater, surrounded by dozens of defeated foes strewn across the dirt. Peng Seojin watches the whole thing in pure disbelief, hardly able to process how he wiped out nearly everyone in one blow. The young master wonders what level of martial mastery a person would even need to pull off something so absurd. The lone survivor stands shaking with his weapon snapped, desperately begging him to hold on a second. He tries to negotiate, suggesting they stand down and talk things out before doing anything crazy. Before he can finish his pitch, an overwhelming force drops out of nowhere and lands a direct hit on him. The enemy lets out a choke in the middle of a dust cloud billowing across the battlefield. A massive hand grabs the surviving leader's throat with an iron grip, completely neutralizing him. The mighty Peng Mugang emerges from the shadows, tightening his grip on the foe and barking that he finally found him. The patriarch declares that these were the cowards who dared attack the Peng clan, catching his masked son-in-law's eye. With a blazing glare, the old man warns the enemy that he better brace himself for what is coming. The prota panics internally upon realizing his father-in-law just popped up, wondering why on earth he had to appear right now. He recalls that in his past life, the brother-in-law made it back on his own, never knowing his father had gone out personally to save him. Unsure of how to handle this awkward situation, the young man seriously considers booking it out of there. Peng Mugang glances at his injured son on the ground, gently telling him to hang in there just a little longer. He promises Dad is here to protect him and begins venting an absurdly violent wave of spiritual energy. The ground fractures beneath the sheer release of power from the patriarch, who gears up to attack the masked intruder. He blurs forward with terrifying speed, throwing a devastating punch straight at the prota. The young man barely has time to react, his eyes going wide at the massive fist flying right at him. A thunderous crash echoes as the prota barely manages to block the strike, getting shoved backward by the force. He realizes that in his past life, a single punch like that would have wiped him off the map instantly. He notes that his father-in-law is not just a monster with a broadsword, but his hand-to-hand combat is equally top tier. Peng Mugang gives him zero breathing room, pressing the attack with another heavily charged fist. The two exchange heavy blows that whip up shockwaves ripping through the dark forest. The old man praises the masked young man's skills, yelling that the kid can actually throw down. Mugang draws his massive broadsword, daring him to see how long he can keep his head on his shoulders. He stomps hard enough to make the earth shake, while the prota gets ready to face his father-in-law's steel. With a fierce glare, the elder channels his power and lunges forward without a shred of hesitation. The patriarch swings his massive blade, sending out arcs of blue energy that tear up the terrain. The devastating slashes chop down trees, leaving a wild path of destruction in their wake. The young man leaps backward to evade the heavy assault, thoroughly impressed by the sheer weight of the strikes. He thinks to himself that if he had not trained his martial arts so intensely, he never would have held up against this heat. Mugang spots his defensive stance and asks if he plans on keeping his weapon sheathed the entire time. The old man proudly raises his blade, roaring at him not to look down on the might of Hebei's Peng clan. He unleashes another massive blow that blows up the earth beneath the prota's feet in a showcase of raw power. The masked young man stands his ground beneath a strange light filtering down from the night sky. With total composure, he begins clicking his blade back into its scabbard. Peng Mugang watches the move intently, locked in on every single twitch from his opponent. The prota finishes sheathing his weapon with seamless precision. The howling wind in the forest finally settles down, leaving the glade in dead silence. The patriarch is left completely stunned, deep in thought after seeing his attack repelled. He wonders if what the mysterious fighter just used was the legendary body protective chi. Mugang ponders how rare it is to witness someone with an internal aura deep enough to shrug off his strike in a split second. The old man shouts, demanding to know why someone with that kind of power would commit such an atrocity here. The prota finds the whole thing to be a massive headache, while the patriarch keeps yelling in anger. Mugang warns that if the masked guy keeps playing mute, he is going to settle this the hard way. The patriarch threatens to finish him off right there, but Seo-jin screams, begging his father to hold his attack. Startled by the sudden yell from his injured son, the old man pauses, asking what is going on. Seo-jin points at the man in black, revealing to his father that this masked guy was actually the one who saved his life. The young master explains that the mysterious figure was solely responsible for taking down all the enemies there. Mugang looks confused, telling his son to slow down while he tries to wrap his head around the whole story. He inspects the bodies of the fallen enemies, realizing his son is right, since the marks match a different fighting style. The patriarch slowly turns around in shock, trying to figure out who this cloaked warrior really is. Right then, Seo-jin passes out from exhaustion, sending his father scrambling over in a panic to help him. Seizing the obvious distraction, the prota uses his insane speed to vanish into thin air without leaving a trace. Mugang tries to get him to wait so he can thank him for the favor, but realizes the man has already evaporated into the night. The old man breathes out in awe at that level of agility, wondering who that mysterious fighter could possibly be. Under the bright moonlight, Mugang decides the best move right now is to carry his injured son straight home. Somewhere deep in the forest, the prota pulls off his mask, flashing a very satisfied grin about how things played out. He walks with purpose toward the crest of a dark, rocky ridge to settle one last piece of business. In the dark, someone gagged is desperately trying to scream while bound tight by heavy ropes. The corrupt merchant who set up the ambush is hanging upside down from a tree as the young man looks on. Taking his sweet time, the prota pulls a small blade and begins cutting the tape covering the man's mouth. With a quick slice, he takes off the gag, finally leaving the terrified captive free to speak. The merchant yells, confused about what is happening, claiming he was asleep in his room just a moment ago. The man begs for his life, promising to hand over anything he wants, making the young man ask if he is really that loaded. The villain offers up all the cash he has, but panics when the young man demands he cough up every last penny. The prota asks if he is planning on saying no, and the terrified merchant agrees to give up where his stash is hidden. The prisoner pleads to be let down once he spills it all, while the rope holding him starts to creak under his weight. The young man looks up, casually remarking that the tree branch does not look sturdy enough to hold out much longer. He plans to make him pay dearly for what his brother-in-law went through, and the spooked merchant asks if he is from the Peng clan. The villain claims it is too late and that Seo-jin is probably gone, but the prota reveals the heir survived without losing his arm. The young man remarks that the merchant's fate has changed as well, leaving the captive totally lost and confused. That man was the head of a shady merchant guild throwing its weight around the entire territory. He was a bottom feeder who would do any dirty job for cash, never hesitating to pull off vile schemes. The young man states his crime was stepping on the weak to get rich, which is why he picked the most fitting end for him. The man screams in despair, claiming the kid promised to let him go and accusing him of running a scam. With his red eyes glowing, the young man tells the villain to shake with fear and face the music with empty pockets. He coldly notes that the man will meet his end alongside the bodies of his goons, lying down by the river below. The merchant begs for help, pleading for him not to walk away, but the prota simply turns his back and strolls off. The tree branch suddenly snaps, and the man plummets toward the drop with one final desperate scream. The following day, peace seems to return to the Grand Peng clan grounds under a crisp blue sky. Resting comfortably in his quarters, Seo-jin finally begins to come to his senses. The whole family gathers around the bed with worried looks, while little Soil sweetly calls for her uncle. The young master slowly opens his eyes, looking around at the folks in the room and asking how everyone is holding up. He remembers the intense moments when he was cornered by the assassins without an exit in sight. In that deadly trap, the wounded young master fought with everything he had to deflect incoming strikes. Even with a badly injured, poisoned arm, Seo-jin put on an impressive display of pure grit. Thankfully, that whole ordeal was in the rearview mirror and the clan heir was officially safe and sound. Sitting up in bed, Seo-jin chats with his sister Yul, apologizing for causing her so much worry. Next, he looks with admiration toward the prota standing nearby, thanking him with genuine warmth. The young man calls him brother-in-law with an intrigued look, studying his facial expressions closely. In his head, the image of that masked warrior who saved him in the woods keeps popping up. The prota simply keeps his classic friendly smile plastered on his face, playing it completely cool. To break the ice, he asks what is up and playfully suggests they should probably call in a doc. Yul asks if he is in a ton of pain and doing all right, but Seo-jin reassures her that he feels fantastic. He says he is fine, but thinks to himself that he must be losing it to imagine this goofy son-in-law and his savior are the same guy. The long-haired young man acts like he has no idea what is going on, calmly observing their reactions. 2 weeks later, a merchant confesses he was paid by the master of the Golden Manor to take Seo-jin out of the picture. However, when the Ping clan operatives went to investigate the mastermind's estate, they were left totally dumbfounded. That entire sprawling, luxury Golden Manor had already been burned straight to the ground. On top of that, the boss was found dead in the ravine, and the entire fortune had mysteriously vanished without a trace. While nobody knew who leveled the place, the patriarch and his son could not help but remember the masked warrior from that night. They wonder who that mysterious guy was who saved the young master, and what he might be up to right now. Back at the Ping clan estate, the prota takes a casual stroll across the bridge over the scenic Lotus Pond. Matriarch Dan Huiyang watches the young man from afar with a thoughtful, concerned expression on her face. She turns to her husband in the room, suggesting he assign their son-in-law some handy task or mission to tackle. Mugang asks what on earth she is talking about, and his wife replies that she means their one and only son-in-law. The patriarch bursts out laughing, calling him a lazy freeloader who lounges around doing nothing all day. She insists that as the clan leader, he ought to mentor the young man, noting he does not need to hand him a fancy title. The wife suggests giving him the kind of gritty grunt work nobody else wants to touch, making Mugang pause and think. She notices his expression shift, asking if her husband just cooked up an interesting idea. The old man flashes a very mischievous smirk, confidently replying that he thought of the absolute perfect gig for him. He promises to do what she asked, remembering that the disciplinary probation for a few clan members is wrapping up soon. Meanwhile, out in the woods, some battered bandits beg for mercy, crying that they already handed over everything they had. A massive, furious bruiser roars at a captive, demanding he quit lying right this instant. The brute accuses the Golden Manor workers of hoarding the rest of the stolen loot somewhere. Since they swear there is nothing left, the thug threatens to sell every single one of them off to get his cash. Right in the middle of his cruel threat, the brute gets clocked by a massive blow out of nowhere, flying through the air. The bandit boss scrambles up from the impact in shock, trying to figure out where that ambush strike came from. A sharp-eyed warrior emerges from between the trees, coldly stating that he finally tracked these clowns down. The dark-robed young man points out that they are the ones behind the recent ruckus in the forest. The goons yell back, claiming they staked out this territory first and telling the crashers to get lost. The squad leader finds all the screaming annoying, casually walking forward toward the local crooks. In a split second, the young fighters dive into the brawl, throwing out slick and aggressive moves. The sharp-toothed kid has a blast slicing through foes, while his buddy complains about how much noise they are making. The bandits fall into complete chaos upon realizing the absurd power of these young combatants. The ringleader tries to pump up his men, yelling not to panic since they have the numbers on their side. However, his goons keep getting sliced up one after another by the sharp-toothed kid's relentless blade. The sharp-toothed youth taunts them, asking if they seriously think they are on the same level, while his brother says he feels insulted. Leader Gu Tai-san tells the brothers Gisang and Gisu to tone it down, since they are scaring the innocent merchants. The two apologize, claiming they did not mean to, while another thug grabs a woman, holding a blade to her neck as a hostage. The crook screams in panic for them to spare him, threatening to cut the poor hostage if anyone takes a step. He tries to negotiate, offering to hand the woman over, but suddenly takes a direct shot right between the eyes. The bandit drops dead with an arrow buried in his forehead, finally setting the terrified hostage free. The two-tone-haired young man watches from a branch above, complaining about what a waste of time this was. Yo Woon-hui sighs, looking up at the sky, celebrating that at least they cleaned out every bandit in the area. The merchants bow all the way to the ground, begging for their lives, while the young man tries to calm them down. The group leader looks a bit puzzled, seeing how overly terrified this poor family is acting. Gu Tai-san playfully smacks Woon-hui's head, joking that they really do look more like crooks than heroes. Woon-hui tries to explain that it is all just a misunderstanding, and that they are actually the good guys. The merchant notices the white wolf embroidered on their gear, realizing they belong to a legendary squad. He asks in awe if they are the famous fighters belonging to the feared White Wolf unit. The man thanks them with emotion, while Tai-san tells them not to sweat it and to stay safe on the road home. Woon-hui suggests they hustle back to base before they catch flack for being out for so long. As they stroll under the blazing sun, one of the fighters decides to bring up a touchy subject. They complain about not being able to grab a drink after doing a good deed, blaming the spoiled young master they beat up before. Woon-hui tells everyone to zip it, reminding them that their house arrest officially wrapped up today. The sharp-toothed boys jump upon spotting a silhouette standing right at the entrance of their place. They bark out, demanding to know who is there and aggressively telling the stranger to identify himself. The prota turns around calmly, and Woon-hui remarks that he figured the guy would not be at his own place. The brothers sniff the prota suspiciously, saying he is handsome but shady, trying to pick up his scent. Gu Tai-san loses his patience and bonks the two boys' heads together to knock off the clowning around. Woon-hui apologizes for their antics, and the prota calmly replies that it is no problem at all. The young man explains he was sent directly by the patriarch himself to handle a matter of top priority with them. Woon-hui looks surprised, asking when he even joined the clan since they have been out of the loop for months. Intrigued by the young warrior's presence, he decides to invite him inside the house so they can talk things through. The prota accepts the invite, sitting at the main room table to start laying out the purpose of his visit. He sets his teacup down firmly on the table, preparing to drop a massive bombshell on the crew. Gu Tai-san formally introduces himself as one of the strongest and most dedicated members of that elite squad. Woon-hui introduces himself politely as well, quickly asking what the real motive behind his visit is. The prota explains point-blank that he came to deliver an official order straight from the clan patriarch himself. Tai-san listens closely, curiously asking what the gist of that important directive from the boss might be. The young man reveals that, starting right this very second, he will be taking the reins as the new commander of the unit. A short while later, they arrive at Muho Fortress, and the prota notes that the place was closer than he imagined. The fortress guards spot their approach, furiously shouting to ask who has the guts to roll up on them. Paying no mind to the thugs shouting, Tai-san gives the green light for the sharp-toothed brothers to kick off the assault. Gisu and Gisang jump at the order, rushing forward with blades ready to slice and dice through the opposition. Tai-san sprints right behind them with immense speed, providing cover to guarantee a clean breach into the fortress. The boys launch themselves off the big guy's shoulders, soaring right over the tall wooden palisade. The muscular warrior lets out a thunderous battle cry that shakes the nerve of every guard on duty. The twins drop from above like lightning bolts, right into the enemy archers guarding the outlaw camp's entrance. They tear through the guards without mercy, while the men scream in panic at the speed of the young fighters. The prota watches the whole thing in silence while Woon-hui directs the rest of the unit to push the assault. Under the weight of the squad's heavy offensive, the massive main wooden gate of the fortress begins to buckle. The White Wolf unit operatives bust through the entrance with ease using kicks packed with spiritual energy. Woon-hui points his blade forward with a grin, excitedly shouting for everyone to keep charging without hesitation. The unit pushes forward relentlessly, wiping out any resistance the bandits try throwing in their way. The prota compliments their textbook teamwork, clocking that they are veterans of countless deadly battles. However, he keeps his eyes fixed ahead, knowing that this quick skirmish was merely the warm-up for the real challenge here. A giant weapon smashes the earth, and a booming voice roars out, demanding to know who dares assault their stronghold. The colossal chieftain Zhu Guangdu emerges hauling his massive battle axe, asking if they came with a death wish today. The goons cheer in relief at their boss's arrival, but Tai-san merely scoffs at how big this scrub's mouth is. The villain points his weapon in anger, asking who he is, to which the big guy replies that he is the man who is going to put him down right here. Livid at the young man's trash talk, Zhu Guangdu roars that never in his entire life has he ever lost a contest of raw brute strength. The enemy leader charges forward, claiming he will make him regret this, but Tai-san mocks him back, saying it is quite a coincidence. The clan warrior flashes a confident smirk and warns that he has never lost a contest of raw strength before either. A monstrous clash of power erupts as the villain's massive axe strikes the ground with extreme violence. The boss panics when he realizes Taesan has vanished from sight, but the young man appears right beside him, remarking on how slow he is. Taesan takes full advantage of his obvious speed and asks sarcastically if brute force is all the enemy has to offer. Zhu Guangdou gets furious at the mockery and spins around quickly, screaming that the young man is nothing but a coward. Their weapons clash again in a rapid flurry of loud strikes, kicking up thick clouds of dust from the ground. Dripping with sweat, the villain realizes the young warrior is deflecting his blows at the very last second just to mess with him. Taesan remarks that with such sluggish moves, he will never land a hit, comparing the leader's speed to that of a turtle. Pushed to the edge, the bandit leader hurls insults at the young man, swearing he will grant his wish to be eliminated right then and there. He gathers every ounce of strength left in his arms and unleashes a crushing blow straight toward the warrior. The villain executes his signature heavy slash, whipping up a literal vortex of dust and destruction. Guangdou cheers arrogantly after the strike, convinced he has finally put the young man down for good. However, to his sheer disbelief, the strike was effortlessly blocked by his opponent's rock-solid blade. Taesan seizes the opening and lands a devastating punch squarely on the bandit leader's face with tremendous force. The impact sends the villain flying as he coughs up blood, screaming in agony from the sheer power of the hit. The warrior steps forward to finish the fight, but the fallen boss descends into pure panic and begs him to wait. Completely ignoring the enemy's desperate pleas, the young man tells him to shut up and swings his blade down to deliver the final blow. Crimson sprays across the battlefield as the remaining bandits watch in horror while their own leader is completely taken out. Taesan calmly sheathes his weapon, and Woonhui congratulates him on a job well done, getting a casual response in return. Yet, even while fatally wounded, the villain begins to let out a chilling laugh, calling the young warriors total fools. Taesan finds the reaction bizarre, while the dying boss mutters that they do not even realize they have stepped straight into their own graves. The villain begins channeling a dark crimson aura at the tips of his fingers, right before drawing his final breath. With his remaining strength, he warns that everyone present will bitterly regret ever setting foot inside the fortress. The man collapses completely lifeless onto the ground, leaving a heavy and tense silence across the area after his final curse. Woonhui turns to the remaining lackeys and yells at them to drop their weapons now that their leader has been taken down. The Proto offers to spare anyone who surrenders, but he senses that something is deeply wrong with the villain's lingering energy. With his crimson eye glowing beneath his hat, he carefully analyzes what that man was truly trying to pull off. The bandits fall into complete despair, crying and wailing that everything has gone downhill for them since this fateful day arrived. Woonhui snaps at the prisoners, losing his patience and asking if they have lost their minds or if they want to be taken out right there. He starts ordering them to yield, but he is suddenly cut short when he detects a strange, overwhelming presence drawing near. A massive shadow flies overhead, putting the clan warriors on immediate high alert. A colossal explosion of earth and stone detonates right in the center of the fortress, raising a dense curtain of smoke. As the dust begins to clear, the men spot a figure's silhouette, prompting a startled Woonhui to ask what on earth that is. From within the smoke, a man grumbles with supreme arrogance about someone daring to disrupt his rest. The crew watches nervously as an unfamiliar elder emerges, walking slowly toward them. The terrifying old man with red markings across his face arrogantly demands to know who dared disturb his slumber. Woonhui stands in shock at the elder's absurd movement speed, frantically racking his brain to recall who he could be. He notices the strange red mark around the old man's right eye and begins suspecting a legendary identity. Taesan asks who he is, but Woonhui screams in desperation for his friend to get away from that dangerous elder immediately. The muscular warrior hesitates, not grasping the panic, while the elder simply stares him down with mockery. With a swift flick of his fingers, the old man unleashes an invisible strike that hits Taesan directly in the face with immense force. A massive, destructive pillar of crimson energy crashes down from the sky onto the young man, triggering a monstrous blast across the courtyard. Taesan slams heavily to the ground, badly injured and coughing up blood under the worried gaze of his teammates. The elder remarks that he intended to finish him on the first try, while the enraged warrior curses at him, calling him a wretched old fiend. Enraged to see his comrade hurt, Woonhui warns that he will not let this slide and orders an immediate assault. The sharp-toothed youths charge swiftly at the enemy, who casually tracks their every movement without breaking a sweat. The elder wears a deeply unsettling, sinister smile upon seeing the sheer determination of the young fighters daring to take him on. In the blink of an eye, the old man fires bursts of energy that strike the youth squarely in the chest, violently throwing them backward. The elder lets out a sinister laugh and mocks the fallen youths, jeering that all their big talk amounted to nothing. The old man strolls forward casually and arrogantly asks them to try entertaining him a bit more in this fight. Woon Hui and the Prota watch that threatening approach in dead silence, fully realizing the extreme danger. With sweat rolling down his face, the dark-haired youth grows intensely tense as his worst suspicions are confirmed. He realizes he is standing before an absolute evil, the legendary and feared lesser demon of extreme evil. That elder was notorious for being a legendary archdemon who drenched the entire Murim in crimson decades ago. He was an unprecedentedly cruel slayer who eliminated people on a whim, making himself everyone's public enemy #1. After taking out the daughter of the Namgung clan and the brother of the alliance leader, the monster simply vanished without a trace. Woon Hui is horrified to find such a dangerous figure standing there and asks his companions if everyone is all right. One of the surviving warriors trembles in fear, but answers yes, struggling to keep his balance on his feet. The Prota swears under his breath, fully aware that this entire situation is going downhill fast. Even though everyone managed to hold on to their lives after the strike, they are all gravely injured and completely drained. The sharp-toothed youths groan in pain on the ground, entirely overwhelmed by the elder's crushing strength. The old man bursts into a hysterical laugh, remarking that some fresh new toys just crawled right into his grasp today. The surviving bandits enter a state of sheer panic, calling him a monster and dreading that he will wipe them all out. They break into a frantic sprint to escape, screaming that they do not want to lose their lives right now. The elder mockingly whines about them running off, asking them to show a little affection after all the time they spent together. With a simple wave of his open palm, the old man unleashes a massive wave of dark energy straight at the runaways. Violent blasts tear through the courtyard, and the bandits trying to flee are completely vaporized by his technique. The monster laughs sadistically, declaring that the agonizing cries of such pests are always music to his ears. He celebrates that the annoying bugs are gone and announces that he now wants to hear the unit's hounds howl in pain. Gutai-san grits his teeth in pure rage at the taunts, swearing he will not let this disrespect slide. He charges forward, yelling that he will take him down for calling the squad hounds, while Woon Hui begs him to stand down. The elder grins as he watches the rush, remarking that there seems to be a bigger hound among this pack of weaklings. He channels his dark power once more to test if that young man's physical frame actually amounts to anything. Tae-san attacks with everything he has, shouting insults at the mad old man who dared look down on his crew. He vows to tear him apart limb from limb, but the elder condenses a highly destructive orb of energy right in his palm. The old man coldly snaps his fingers, blasting a shockwave directly into the young man's face mid-swing. Tae-san is violently hurled backward in pain, while the elder mocks him, saying the sound he made when hitting the ground was delightful. The old man announces that he changed his mind, and although he planned to play with them for a single day, he decided on something far worse. He promises to tear them apart slowly over 3 whole days, adding that he is already thrilled by the very idea. Woon Hui yells furiously that he will never allow such cruelty and rallies all the surviving warriors of the squad. The young man commands them to assume the 5 wheels blade formation, and they all promptly respond that they copy the order. The terrifying elder flashes a mocking grin and coldly warns that their reaction comes far too late. He commands them all to scream at the top of their lungs and feel honored to witness his immense martial prowess. The monster unleashes his devastating annihilation art, raining dozens of purple energy spheres right down upon the squad. The warriors gaze up at the sky in pure terror, given no time to react before being swallowed by the storm of raw power. Desperate cries echo through the courtyard as the barrage shatters the defenses of every single squad member. The lesser demon of extreme evil stands tall, right at the epicenter of that terrifying purple tempest. With almost every warrior down and defeated in the dirt, the old man sarcastically remarks on how beautiful youth is. He lets out wicked laughs while one of the injured soldiers groans on the ground right next to his shattered blade. Woon Hui falls to his knees, panting, completely stunned by the unfathomable gap in power between them. The villain mocks his pathetic state and orders the young man to start begging for his life right where he kneels. Suddenly, the Prota states that this is more than enough and steps up to take charge, telling his friend to fall back. Woon Hui looks back in utter surprise, realizing the new commander did not run away and decided to step in to save them. The young man assumes his friend's name and tells the elder that he is the squad commander, leaving the old man intrigued by the bluff. The old man mocks him, saying he was hiding away like a rat, and claims the youth possesses zero presence of a true leader. He figures it is impossible for anyone to hide their chi in front of him, concluding the youth is just a nobody pretending to be tough. The elder asks if he came forward to beg for his life, and the prota sarcastically questions if he would actually spare him if he did. Woonhui shouts frantically, warning that this man is a cruel fiend who has eliminated thousands and that this is a trap. The elder cleans his ear with disdain, calling him noisy, but the prota calmly reassures him that he has something valuable to offer. The prota gives a subtle smirk with his crimson eyes flashing, warning that he will take him down without much pain. Woonhui and the other unit survivors stare at him in total bewilderment, completely thrown off by those words. Even the feared elder Chemu is caught off guard, left wondering what on earth this kid is babbling about. The old man asks if he is messing with him, but the youth says he is merely concerned for his well-being and tells him to think it through. Chemu clenches his fists with pure hatred at the insolence, wondering what kind of fearless lunatic is standing before him. The elder flies into a complete rage, declaring that the young man must have a serious death wish to speak so recklessly. Without a moment's hesitation, he channels his dark energy and fires off another snap-of-the-finger strike at the prota. A massive barrage of purple energy spheres rains down upon the youth, who stands his ground without flinching in the slightest. He calmly shuts his eyes as the dust and destructive shockwaves violently tear through the surroundings. The young man emerges completely unscathed and points out they were in the middle of a chat, leaving the elder stunned by the dodge. Chemu is utterly dumbfounded and yells in fury, claiming it is impossible for anyone to dodge his strike. Driven mad by rage, the old man screams that the youth is as good as done for and attacks again, firing off even more chi blasts. With effortless composure, the prota simply tilts his head as the energy spheres graze right past him. Woonhui watches the whole scene in sheer panic and screams for the commander, terrified that he might take a direct hit. His friend fixes his wide eyes on the fortress courtyard, completely unable to track the mind-boggling speed of the strikes. A massive crash echoes out as the attacks detonate, obliterating a section of the wall and the surrounding buildings. The courtyard of Muho Fortress is consumed by violent purple blasts, throwing up immense clouds of dirt and smoke. The prota reappears without a scratch and asks where he learned such terrible manners, making all that noise while they were talking. Suddenly, he launches a counterattack, unleashing the exact same technique as the old man, but in an overwhelmingly powerful golden version. Chemu is horrified to see the young man copy his secret technique on the fly, a feat even the 12 venerables could barely pull off. Taisan and Woonhui watch in total shock, and the big guy asks his friend if what he just witnessed was actually real. They know the elder's move was a supreme, lightning-fast technique that neither of them could ever hope to dodge. Seeing their new leader replicate it flawlessly after just a few glances leaves everyone wondering who on earth the young lady brought to the clan. One thing was crystal clear to the wounded warriors: that young man was definitely no harmless book teacher. Woonhui regrets his past behavior, while the old man fearfully asks who the heck that dark-haired youth really is. He replies that he belongs to the Peng clan, but the old man laughs it off, saying the clan could never produce such a monster. The prota smiles with disdain and promises that, starting today, things will be entirely different for the family. He declares that the Peng clan will become the greatest clan under the heavens, drawing mocking laughter from the demon elder. The old man continues cackling sarcastically, while the youth maintains the exact same calm stance with his hands behind his back. Chemu says the clan might rise, but warns that before that happens, he will make sure to crush every last one of them with his own hands. The villain claims he holds far more power beyond that move, and warns the youth to feel honored to witness his brand new technique. Taisan and Woonhui watch in absolute terror as the elder's body begins undergoing a grotesque and violent mutation. The prota calmly watches the transformation unfold, keeping a faint smirk on his face without showing a speck of fear. Chemu activates the 10th form of his tainted blood art and warns that the kid will deeply regret seeing it. The elder's body warps into a gargantuan, hypermuscular fiend engulfed in a terrifying crimson aura. The wounded soldiers stare at their commander, unable to grasp why he remains completely still, just watching that transformation happen. One of the sharp-toothed twin brothers turns around worriedly and asks the other if he has any clue how to win this. Suddenly, the monster unleashes a massive blast of crimson energy that violently slams into the squad members. The prota dodges with ease, but the residual force of that brutal rush sweeps across the entire fortress courtyard. Woon Hui is sent flying while coughing up blood, entirely unable to withstand the overwhelming pressure from the transformed monster. The villain pins him to the ground and tells him to shut up, labeling the White Wolf unit members as nothing but insignificant trash. The monster mocks the Prota for not stepping in to help his comrade, asking if he finally got scared. Chaemu wants to know if he is terrified, but the young man calmly replies that such a thing would hardly ever happen. The Prota locks a serious gaze onto his opponent and coldly explains that there was simply no need for him to move. He proudly claims he can handle attacks of that caliber all on his own, leaving the elder stunned by the audacity. Chaemu falls dead silent, with rage boiling through his veins as he vows to end that young man's life. He raises his claws, saying he will poke so many holes into his body that he will turn him into a literal musical instrument. The elder sprints forward at high speed and asks which vital point the youth wants him to target first with those lethal piercings. The monster suggests the Danzhong acupoint or the lower dantian, while the Prota watches the charge with complete composure. The young man tracks his approach and thinks to himself that the only loud, noisy instrument around here is the elder himself. Chaemu taunts his opponent, calling him a weakling whose only real trick is dodging around. The elder arrogantly guarantees he will corner him so that he has nowhere left to run. He screams in fury that he will make him pay dearly for daring to act so arrogant and smug in his presence. The monster swears he will tear him completely apart and scatter his remains across the fortress like a lovely melody. He channels his massive chi and launches an amplified version of his annihilation strike, sending dozens of energy fists flying. The courtyard is utterly devastated by the relentless barrage of purple power that swallows the spot where the youth stood. Believing he has won the fight, Chaemu flashes a sadistic, thoroughly satisfied grin at the sheer scale of the destruction. He chuckles, noting how surprising it was that a mere rat forced him to expend so much of his spiritual energy. The elder brags about his overwhelming power, claiming he can wipe out any opponent with a single breath. The old man gathers a massive sphere into his fist and prepares to reveal his true, hidden martial mastery. He fires off his most devastating final attack toward the young man, carving a colossal crater into the stone ground. The villain celebrates, thinking the enemy was wiped out without even managing to let out one final desperate cry. However, the Prota calmly reappears right by his side and asks if this is the first time he has gone all out. He sarcastically questions if the old man is fighting at maximum output, leaving the elder completely flabbergasted. Chaemu's eye widens in panic, totally unable to fathom how that young man managed to dodge his supreme strike. The villain wildly swings at him in a blind rage, screaming insults at the young man with everything he has got. The Prota leaps away to dodge and remarks that he only ever defeated weaklings in the past to feel like a real warrior. He adds that the old man should be ashamed of calling himself absolute evil while being so weak, further enraging the elder. The young man calmly snaps his fingers and mocks the enemy for losing his cool over mere words. In the blink of an eye, the Prota lands an energy strike on the old man's chest, violently blasting him backward. Chaemu coughs up blood, heavily damaged by the sudden impact, struggling to comprehend where such overwhelming force came from. The Prota looks down on him with disdain, stating that he is nothing more than a noisy, bottom-tier brawler. Insulted at being called insignificant, the demon of extreme evil grinds his teeth in fury and begins unleashing his raw chi. The elder roars that this is unforgivable, swearing he will rip him to shreds and end his life this very day. Taishan watches from a distance in utter shock, wondering what kind of monstrous energy is radiating from the opponent. The villain warns that it is now far too late to beg for mercy, condensing an enormous mass of dark energy in his hand. Chaemu activates the peak stage of his wicked blood art and dares the young man to keep smiling after seeing this. The squad warriors tremble under the crushing pressure, wondering if this is the true might of one of the world's 7 great evils. Woon Hui wonders what their commander is made of to take that terrifying energy head-on without taking a single step back. The Prota agrees with his friend and decides to move his subordinates away, stating that this clash is way too much for them. The elder mockingly asks if he is begging him to hold back, all while letting his entire destructive aura erupt. The earth shakes and cracks begin tearing across the fortress courtyard beneath the sheer force of the villain's dreadful crimson energy. Chaemu warns that he does not care about his feelings and launches a terrifying assault straight at the young commander. The elder lets out a monstrous laugh as crimson smoke engulfs the entire courtyard, tearing through the stone foundation. The Prota dodges with agility, while the irritated monster complains that he is still just running away from direct combat. The villain accuses him of talking big while constantly running away, as the young man calmly observes him from afar. The elder's attack demolishes the fortress defenses behind them, terrifying the other lackeys watching from the sidelines. Cackling madly, Chemu commands everyone to scream in agony a bit more to satisfy his immense bloodlust. The prota calmly materializes behind the elder and apologizes for ruining the excitement, but delivers a cold warning to the villain. The young man explains he intended to teach him a lesson because he felt bad about his empty fists, but ended up just getting bored. He bluntly announces that this brawl has lost all its fun, as he gets ready to deliver a new strike against the enemy. In the blink of an eye, the prota strikes the elder with a pinpoint blow that shatters the demon's defensive stance. Chemu is blasted far away by the violent impact, triggering a massive explosion of dirt in the middle of the fortress. The old man coughs up blood and complains that the young man wants to end the fight without his permission, ranting with pure hatred from the ground. Desperate, he swears he will take him down at all costs and clutches his wounded face, consumed by an uncontrollable fury. The elder gathers every last scrap of energy he has left, preparing to gamble his own life on his final trump card. He laughs insanely and declares he does not care if he destroys his own body as long as he pulls off this technique. The villain channels the yin-yang annihilation finger art and commands the youths to scream in agony together this very instant. The prota flashes a calm, subtle grin before the madman who spent his entire life hurting and taking down innocent people. He thinks to himself that fighting that old man was a pathetic waste of time and that his final attack will be forgotten just as easily. Yo Woon-hui looks at the enemy's attack and finds the technique utterly trivial. He then decides to activate his heavenly divine martial art to put an end to this fight once and for all. Woon-hui unleashes the overwhelming power of the demon destruction, palm against his adversary. The attack strikes the target with a thunderous impact, making the entire region tremble under the force of the golden energy. The demon descends into complete despair, screaming that this cannot truly be happening. He can barely believe that his supreme technique was overcome so effortlessly. The elder lets out a terrible scream of agony as he is completely swallowed by the pillar of light. When the dust finally settles, all that remains is the villain's battered, armless body kneeling lifelessly on the ground. Without a shred of strength left, the monster's petrified body tilts to the side and collapses onto the dirt. The squad warriors stand in total shock, seeing that the terrifying demon of extreme evil was truly defeated. Woon-hui casually walks over toward his subordinates as if nothing had even happened. He looks at the White Wolf Unit warriors and calmly asks if everyone is all right. Sometime later, the scene shifts to a gorgeous palace surrounded by a lake filled with lotus leaves. Yule stands upon a bridge, gazing at the horizon with a deeply thoughtful expression. Just then, a voice remarks that she seems to be carrying a heavy burden of worry in her heart. Yule turns to her mother and mentions that the wind is getting chilly, suggesting she head inside the house. The young woman laments that her husband has been sleeping out under the cold wind for many days in a row now. The mother comments that while the Ping clan warriors might be used to the freezing wind, her son-in-law is different. She reminds her that he is quite different from the rest of the people living in that palace of warriors. The mother goes on to say that, until recently, he was just a simple village teacher for young kids. Suddenly, someone comes running up in a rush, shouting for his older sister out in the courtyard. Ping Seo-jin approaches, calling out for his mother, who asks what is causing all this commotion. He reports that the White Wolf unit has returned and that they took down the feared demon of extreme evil. The unit warriors march in triumphantly, bringing along the proof of their massive victory. The surrounding onlookers wonder in utter shock if they truly managed to defeat that terrifying monster. Some comment on the squad's incredible strength, while others wonder if the teacher made it back in one piece. Seo-jin pauses thoughtfully, wondering if his brother-in-law was merely dead weight for the warriors. Woon-hui looks back and spots his wife, Yul, holding little Soyul in her arms right nearby. Yul calls out to her husband emotionally, while little Soyul cheers happily upon seeing her father. The young man gives a warm, affectionate smile upon seeing the two of them waiting for him. Woon-hui smiles with relief and affectionately says that he is finally back home. One of the warriors mentions that they will be meeting with the clan patriarch shortly. The man notes that the patriarch must be thrilled and suggests using this chance to gain some serious prestige. Tai-san clenches his fist tightly and calls for the commander to discuss something serious. He says he thought it over and cannot accept the unit taking all the credit for taking down the monster. The warrior points out that if the commander had not been there, they all would have become the enemy's playthings. The other warrior agrees, stating that it was Woon-hui who faced the villain all alone and took his head. He adds that none of them have any intention of stealing their leader's glory. Everyone bows respectfully, pleading with him to tell the patriarch the full truth. Woon Hui lets out a soft smile and remarks that his subordinates are far too honorable for their own good. He tells them the matter is settled, as he hates the hassle of dealing with the fame of his true strength. Taesan pauses thoughtfully and asks if even the patriarch remains unaware of the commander's real power. Woon Hui confirms that he knows nothing, just as his brother-in-law Ping Seojin has no clue either. Curious, the subordinate asks why he chose to reveal his incredible power this time around. The young man explains that he just took the post and could not simply watch his men perish right before his eyes. He asks them not to give him credit, as things would get way too exhausting if the truth ever got out. Suddenly, another subordinate raises his hand and asks a rather unexpected question. He asks what they will do if other powerful villains attack them, just to test the unit's strength. Woon Hui chuckles and says he will take them out in the blink of an eye, startling Taesan with his sheer composure. Taesan smirks and thinks that, in the end, this arrangement actually works out great for him. He turns to his men and orders everyone to mentally prepare themselves from this moment on. He warns that the moment they step through those doors, they will be known as the ones who took down the feared demon of extreme evil. With a confident grin on his face, the commander gives the final order for them to finally enter. The doors to the clan's grand hall slowly begin to swing open before the returning squad. Patriarch Peng Mugang sits upon his throne and remarks that those troublemakers actually pulled off a monumental feat. The commander bows respectfully alongside his men and expresses his gratitude for the patriarch's kind words. Gutae-san notices that the patriarch is in a fantastic mood and finds it only natural that they were welcomed with such great fanfare. He recalls that the demon was a fiend no one could capture for years, despite reports that he was already wounded. To Taesan, even while weakened, that terrifying villain still possessed strength comparable to the patriarch himself. Yet, a formidable and relentless adversary of that level ended up completely defeated. He knows full well that it was their young commander who truly put an end to that monster's life. Taesan feels a massive urge to spill the entire truth to the patriarch right at that very moment. Meanwhile, a mustached man watches the scene from the corner of his eye with a deeply suspicious look. He steps forward, bows, and asks if he may speak a word, receiving permission from the patriarch. He states that the name of the White Wolf unit will soon echo throughout the entire Murim, bringing invitations from all over. The patriarch agrees that the ripple effect of taking down one of the world's greatest villains will be enormous. The man mentions that this is wonderful for the clan, but quickly shifts his tone of voice. He reveals his concern over whether the current unit commander has the capacity to handle such high-stakes matters. The man begs the patriarch not to misunderstand, claiming he has no intention of putting down his son-in-law. He explains that self-serving opportunists are already circling, and leading the squad might prove to be far too heavy a burden for him. The man pleads for his loyalty to be recognized and wanting to relieve the young man from such a grueling, exhausting task. Intrigued, the patriarch asks if he has another name in mind to take over leadership of the unit. The man then suggests his own son, Do Hwan, claiming he seems exceptionally well suited for the position. The patriarch recalls suggesting that before and being turned down, but the man explains his son was not ready back then. The leader asks if the youth is ready now, and the father firmly insists that the young man is completely prepared. Hearing that, Gutae-san gets extremely ticked off and tries to step forward to protest. However, Woon Hui extends his arm in front of his subordinate, stopping him from causing a scene right there. Taesan falls silent and steps back reluctantly, honoring the quiet order given by his commander. The patriarch agrees that the youth is qualified, but states they must hear the opinions of the people directly involved. He then turns to the White Wolf unit warriors and asks what they have to say about this proposal. The leader notes he is fully aware they did not have much fondness for their new commander at first. Next, he asks them directly if the warriors would like to receive a brand new leader for their squad. At that moment, the unit members step forward in unison with firm, unwavering resolve across the hall. They proudly declare that their current commander is the one and only leader they will ever acknowledge in the unit. In another room of the palace, the young man's father chuckles at the situation, and the other man asks if he finds this amusing. The ally points out that the warriors rejected the offer right in front of everyone, but the man says they had no choice. Peng Do-wan says the group just got off probation and would never risk upsetting the patriarch and the young lady. The father agrees, while the young man thanks him for his concern, noting that he found their choice of words quite peculiar. He remembers the warriors declaring with pure conviction that their commander was their true leader. Do-wan recalls how clearly they expressed their desire to keep serving under that young man's orders no matter what. He says he understands them turning down his father, but cannot grasp their absolute insistence on sticking with the current leader. The father mentions that he also noticed the atmosphere shifted, and it seems the warriors have finally found their footing. He explains there is zero chance the squad will betray their leader, so they will have to make the young man step down on his own. Do-won asks if there is a plan, and the father says he wants to see just how solid the pillar holding that unit together really is. The young man flashes a wicked grin and suggests giving that group's foundation a little shake to see what happens. Meanwhile, little Soyul curiously slides open the room's door and peeks outside. Spotting her father down the hall, the little girl runs toward him full of joy, calling out his name. He hugs her tightly and asks if she was a good girl, to which she happily replies that she ate lots of yummy sweets. The young man closes his eyes and savors that warm, tender moment, deeply missing his beloved little daughter. He laughs, saying that tickles, while his wife Yule watches the two of them with crossed arms right nearby. Yule asks if he is finally back, and Woon-hui nervously tries to explain that he spent some time with the squad before returning. She calls his name in a dead serious tone, making the young man gulp nervously and stutter his reply. Yule lets out a long sigh and asks point blank if her husband cannot simply step away from the White Wolf unit. He asks if something went wrong, and she confirms it, saying he was supposed to hunt simple bandits, yet ended up facing absolute evil. She clutches her own clothes in worry, reminding him that he took on a terrifying demon without even being an official clan warrior. She points out that he has never lifted anything heavier than his own daughter, leaving the young man completely at a loss for words. With tears welling in her eyes, she asks what would become of her and their daughter if something awful had happened to him in that fight. Little Soil asks if mommy is crying, while Woon-hui silently realizes he had been blind to his wife's feelings all along. He admits he was far too naive to think passing the credit to the squad would fix everything, and offers a heartfelt apology. Woon-hui gently touches her cheek and tenderly assures her that if she wishes, he can resign from the post by tomorrow morning. Yule gently pouts, saying he always knows just what to say, but the young man firmly reiterates that he is being completely sincere. She says she knows how attached he has grown to the warriors, admitting that the commander position is not something he can easily walk away from. She then raises her index finger high and demands that her husband make exactly 2 crucial promises to her. The young man looks at her in surprise, eagerly waiting to hear what his wife is about to ask of him. 1 week later, the sound of a branch cutting through the air echoes across the clan courtyard, paired with a child-spirited grunt. Little Soil practices martial moves holding a tree branch with all the cuteness and determination of a true warrior. She leaps into the air and delivers a quick forward thrust with her tiny makeshift staff. Woon-hui holds a wooden sword and watches his daughter train joyfully from afar with a massive, proud smile. He vividly recalls the 2 promises his wife asked of him so seriously just the week before. The first condition set by Yule was crystal clear for her husband's own safety and protection. She demanded that he stay completely clear of dangerous missions whenever there was any choice in the matter. The second promise was that he must learn martial arts so he could defend himself on his own, if needed in the future. The young man wraps up his training pretending to be exhausted, letting out a tired sigh to maintain his weak cover. Suddenly, firm footsteps begin echoing across the stone courtyard, immediately catching the young commander's attention. Peng Do-hwan approaches, greeting the leader, who calmly asks who the man that just arrived might be. Do-hwan says it is an honor to meet him and mentions the rumors about his martial training, to which Woon-hui replies that news travels fast. He chuckles, saying everything spreads within the clan, but inwardly thinks with disdain about that guy being the commander. He looks at Woon-hui with contempt, finding him a clueless fool and failing to understand how the veteran warriors ever accepted him. The challenger reflects that many things seem odd since the commander secured a massive victory yet stayed completely quiet about it. He also remembers that it was the teacher himself who turned down the unit commander position right at the very beginning. Do-won does not forget the stern, threatening warning he received from one of the White Wolf unit veteran warriors either. Back in the present, Do-hwan offers to help him out in some way, and Woon-hui asks how that would work. The warrior says it is important to try new things and that he must be getting tired of just practicing basic moves. Woon-hui cracks a subtle smile, thinking that the scheme behind the young man's pretty words is painfully obvious. Deciding to play dumb, he asks what he suggests, and Do-won explains that true learning comes from real combat. Woon-hui pretends to agree with the concern, and Do-won insists he needs to get used to serious sparring before it is too late. With a confident smirk, Do-won offers a formal bow and challenges him to a quick, friendly sparring match right there in the courtyard. The commander stares at him, wondering if the skill gap between them is not way too massive for this to even count as training. The warrior assures him it will be light just to point out defensive openings, and the Prota ends up agreeing to the offer. Do-hwan suggests Woon-hui use the wooden sword he is already holding to try landing the strike he was practicing earlier. The Prota fakes an awkward swing, and the opponent pretends to give tips, telling him he needs to steady his stance better. Woon-hui scratches his head bashfully and says, "This is tough," but the other reassures him that it is always like that at the start. Do-hwan smiles warmly and invites him to try launching a direct attack against him to see how he fares. The opponent arrogantly states he can strike with full power, as there is zero chance of him being hurt by the young man. While Do-hwan is still finishing his sentence with total disdain, the squad commander firms his grip on the wooden sword. In the blink of an eye and with extreme agility, the young man dashes forward at a speed Do-hwan cannot even visually track. Woon-hui halts his strike perfectly flush against the opponent's forehead, leaving the challenger frozen in absolute shock. Cold sweat starts pouring down the warrior's face, completely unable to muster any reaction before the young man's terrifying speed. In Do-hwan's mind, a monstrous and terrifying shadow with glowing red eyes looms, blanketing the entire horizon before him. Thoroughly horrified by that lethal presence, the young challenger realizes the terrible mistake he made by underestimating the commander. Do-hwan lets out a terrified shriek and falls flat on his backside, trembling uncontrollably from the sheer fright. Woon-hui calmly lowers his wooden sword and asks with complete nonchalance if the young man is all right. Panting and sweating from sheer dread, Do-hwan tries to process what just happened, wondering what on earth that presence was. The commander simply flashes a friendly smile and plays dumb, asking what could have possibly happened as well. The sun shines brightly in the blue sky as the previous tense atmosphere slowly begins to fade from the courtyard. Later on, the entire White Wolf unit gathers in an organized and imposing formation out on the main courtyard. Gu Tai-san steps up to the front of the group and begins speaking with deep firmness and determination in his voice. Woon-hui walks over, asking if everyone managed to get some good rest, and the warriors respond with a resounding yes in unison. The young man recalls that they wanted to discuss something serious, and Tai-san confirms it, dreading what the topic might bring. The commander jokes, asking if they are still unhappy and want his resignation, sending Tai-san into a frantic panic to deny it. They plead, saying they were deceived by Oh Che-mu and were merely being used, until the leader tells everyone to hush. Tai-san clears his throat awkwardly and decides to finally cut straight to the main point of today's talk. He admits the last battle laid bare the squad's weaknesses, and that they only survived thanks to the commander, who asks what they want. The warrior bows respectfully and begs the commander to train them so they can grow significantly stronger. The proto watches his subordinate bowed before him, showing deep and sincere resolve. Woon-hui fixes a deep, serious gaze upon them, quietly reflecting on their intense desire for growth. He accepts the request, but warns that they need to brace themselves, leaving the warriors thrilled and fired up by the answer. He confirms he will train them, yet cautions with a grin that his training regimen will be brutally harsh. Soon after, the warriors are already shown groaning in utter exhaustion under the weight of a grueling workout. Tai-san strains with absurd effort and yells with everything he has got while hauling a colossal boulder on his back. While calmly sipping his tea, Woon-hui reflects on how the human body is the true vessel for martial arts. He muses that many believe it is too late to achieve an ideal physique without undergoing a rebirth or waiting for the next life. However, looking at his men pushing through while carrying boulders, the commander claims he can see something special in them. He knows full well that every single one of them holds immense latent potential to reach a far higher martial realm. He places his teacup on the table upon noticing someone watching from afar, amused by that persistent personality. Do-hwan is seen peeking over the wall, intensely curious, making Woon-hui ponder if he should just leave him be. Do-hwan looks at the massive boulders scattered across the courtyard and wonders if every single member of that unit has lost their mind. The young man grows thoroughly confused and annoyed, unable to fathom the real reason they are putting themselves through such grueling labor. At that moment, Do-hwan recalls once again that dark, terrifying presence he felt radiating from the commander not long ago. He remembers that by foolishly trying to teach the young man a lesson that day, his body and mind were completely shattered by fear. That dreadful nightmare haunted him so much that he resolved he had to uncover his rival's true secret identity at all costs. As a result of his snooping, Do-hwan ended up tailing the couple and now watches them from afar, hidden behind a tree. Little Soil runs joyfully toward her father, while Do-hwan notes just how incredibly adorable his daughter is. Seeing the sweet scene of Woon-hui playing with his daughter alongside his wife, the spy thinks starting a family might not be bad at all. Do-hwan catches himself smiling warmly and genuinely as he witnesses that happy, peaceful moment of family affection. He shakes his head frantically in denial to brush off those silly thoughts and lock back onto his true objective here. The young man gets frustrated that he has failed to dig up a single solid lead on who that mysterious man truly is. Woon-hui firmly shuts his book, wrapping up his reading and drawing the attention of everyone present in the courtyard. He praises the efforts of his exhausted subordinates, saying they did far better than expected during today's training. The commander mentions they can quit whenever they like, but guarantees that if they complete these grueling tasks daily, he promises he will surely grant them what they desire most, prompting the warriors to cheer back, fired up and motivated. Do-hwan tries to wrap his head around what that promise means, while the warriors laugh out loud, declaring they will never give up on the training. The young man is left completely baffled, understanding absolutely nothing about what is unfolding before his very eyes. He watches the warriors making goofy faces from pure exhaustion and wonders why on earth they are all acting so silly. Later that night in the pitch-black forest, the young man curses under his breath, unable to get that question out of his head. Just then, the young commander is seen strolling completely alone through the dense woods in the dead of night. Hidden behind a tree, Do-hwan keeps tailing his footsteps closely, maintaining a constant surveillance over him. He finds it highly suspicious for his rival to head into the forest alone at this hour, swearing that tonight he will finally learn the full truth. Suddenly, Woon-hui glances sideways as a quick gleam flashes in the dark, startling the spy who did not see it coming. Woon-hui vanishes in the blink of an eye, prompting Do-hwan to click his tongue in annoyance and leap quickly to try and catch up. He propels himself through the trees with everything he has, determined not to lose the commander's trail in the dark. Out of breath, Do-hwan tries to understand how a simple teacher can move with such insane speed and agility through the woods. He finally spots him standing in an open clearing holding a real sword, wondering what he plans to do out there. Suddenly, the blade of Woon-hui's sword begins glowing brightly with the golden energy of his celestial power. The commander unleashes a mighty slash into the air, generating a colossal wave of golden energy that leaves the spy completely floored. He executes the motion with absolute perfection and grace, keeping a calm, focused expression in the middle of the forest. A massive pillar of bright blue light shoots straight up toward the starry sky in breathtaking fashion. The young man stands quietly atop a rock, bathed in the soft glow of the crescent moon and wrapped in a vast celestial radiance. Woon-hui calmly sheathes his sword, taking a deep breath after wrapping up the showcase of his technique. Do-hwan collapses to the ground with all the strength drained from his legs, trembling in sheer awe after witnessing that divine level of power. The following day, the commander is already back in the courtyard, peacefully reading his book among the training boulders. Do-hwan approaches timidly from behind, and Woon-hui turns around, warmly asking what brings him by at this hour. Do-hwan gulps nervously and asks point-blank if it was truly him who took down the terrifying demon of extreme evil in battle. Met with the leader's silence, he states he already knew, as it would be practically impossible for the squad to pull off such a massive feat. Woon-hui gently counters, asking if that assessment of the squad is not a bit too harsh, defending his men's great capabilities. The commander notes that he seems to have already reached his own conclusion and asks what he plans to do from here on out. He remarks that this is a very important question and prepares to give the young man his definitive answer. The young man explains that, above all else in this world, his one and only greatest desire is to protect his beloved family from any danger. The commander wants to ensure the peace and safety of all his family members living within that grand martial palace. He adds that he also wishes to protect this place and the warriors of his unit, stating that this is truly all he wants. The commander coldly warns that he will show zero mercy toward any person or group that dares threaten their peace. Do-hwan stands stunned, seeing the unwavering resolve in that man's eyes, realizing the sheer weight behind his words. Completely won over by that noble and mighty presence, Do-hwan feels an overwhelming urge to fight by that man's side. He drops to his knees respectfully before Woon-hui, solemnly swearing to follow him and live to serve under his command from this day forth. Under the watchful gaze of the other warriors in the background, Do-hwan earnestly begs the commander to accept him into the unit. With the new member welcomed, the White Wolf unit presses on with their intense daily training using weighted swords. Some veteran members look across the courtyard and remark in surprise that they expected Do-hwan to cause trouble, yet he fit right in. While the warriors push through their rigorous drills in the back, the prota strolls peacefully across the yard, observing everyone's progress. The young man lets out a soft, satisfied smile, musing on how the paths of fate can take such unexpected turns. Tai-san and the rest give their absolute all with every single move, showing they are ready to do whatever it takes to elevate their martial strength. The commander recalls that those very warriors formed the feared Red Wolf unit across the Central Plains during his past life. He remembers the tragic end they all met back then, and deeply wishes that, in this new life, no one suffers such a cruel fate. Woon-hui wants to guide his men so they grow strong enough to overcome any future obstacle or enemy. The prota sets his gaze with deep resolve, telling himself that he will make sure everything turns out right this time around. The bright, sunny blue sky shines above the clan palace, bringing a pleasant sense of peace and renewal to the day. Suddenly, Taesan starts complaining in panic, asking what on earth they did wrong to be given 2 whole days off. The twins join in on the complaints, tearfully begging the commander not to give up on them and to cancel this sudden break. The commander tries to calm them down, explaining they simply need some rest, but the warriors yell back that they do not need time off. He chuckles awkwardly, thinking that pushing the body past its limits is not the only path to gaining strength, but realizes there is no easy convincing here. The young man can clearly see that his men's muscle fibers and bodies have already reached their absolute limit. He firmly explains that learning to rest is vital to growing stronger without breaking the body down, and the men reluctantly accept the order. Suddenly, Taesan glances behind the commander and curiously asks who is peeking at their training over there. Little Soil pops up, peeking adorably from behind a wooden pillar with her big blue eyes. The father explains that she begged relentlessly to come along, and the warriors completely melt over how precious the little girl is. The commander encourages his little daughter to take a step forward and greet the warriors, who are eager to meet her. Feeling shy, the girl hides behind her father's leg and offers a tiny hello, making the men nearly faint from the sheer cuteness. Taesan crouches down with a massive grin to greet her gently, but the little girl gets a bit startled by his massive size. Spooked by the giant warrior, the little one quickly hides behind her father's black cloak, peeking out with just one eye. Taesan freezes in total shock, realizing he just scared his respected commander's adorable little daughter. The father finds it funny and teases that the little one was not even scared of the grumpy patriarch, leaving Taesan even more devastated. Taesan tries to defend himself, saying people usually cry tears of joy when they see him, but Do-hwan thinks they cry out of pure terror. Being utterly sweet, Little Soil extends a small blue handkerchief to Taesan, gently asking him to please stop crying. Deeply touched by the little girl's kindness, the big guy gets all choked up while Woon-hui laughs at the heartwarming scene. Suddenly, his brother-in-law Peng Seo-jin walks over with a smile on his face, asking what is bringing everyone so much joy. Seo-jin mentions he heard about everyone's massive growth and that the unit is now the greatest pride of the Peng clan. Staying modest, Woon-hui replies that his brother-in-law is praising them way too much, stating the team still has a long road ahead. Seo-jin offers a warm, friendly smile, showing immense pride and respect for his brother-in-law. He reveals that the real reason for his visit is that he needs to make a very important request of his brother. The young man invites his brother-in-law for a stroll outside the palace grounds to get some fresh air. The two arrive at the village, where they are welcomed with immense joy and respect by the local residents. An elderly lady offers him some food, and the young man kindly thanks her, saying they really did not need to fuss over him so much. Woon-hui offers to help if they ever run into trouble, advising them with a smile to simply live long and happy lives. Curious, Seo-jin asks his brother-in-law what the peaceful place he used to live in was like before joining the clan. The young man mentions he heard from his sister that it was beautiful, and Woon-hui confirms it was called Sodom Village, filled with wonderful people. The youth reveals that the village was the sanctuary he used to escape to alone whenever he felt suffocated by the clan. He recalls saving the villagers from bandits once, yet they blamed him out of fear of future retaliation once he left. Met with the prota's silence, young Seo-jin declared to all of them back then that he would take full responsibility for protecting the village to the very end. At first, nobody believed him, but since he always returned to look after them, the villagers finally began smiling at him. He admits that had he not returned alive from that last perilous mission, he would never have been able to keep his promise. The young man regrets never having the chance to truly thank his savior for rescuing his life in that brutal battle. Seo-jin looks deeply into his brother-in-law's eyes and confesses he believes his mysterious savior was truly him all along. The commander remains in complete silence, but offers a subtle nod, confirming the young man's suspicions. Seo-jin says he already had a hunch and feels relieved, asking next what the real reason was for his brother-in-law saving his life. With a very friendly and welcoming expression, the prota begins explaining why he stepped in to save him. He affectionately confesses he saved him simply because the young heir was the very first person in the clan to accept him as family. He remembers he was bracing for humiliation upon returning to the clan, yet was welcomed with open arms by the young man. The young man says that was only the natural thing to do, reflecting that although he hides his power, things will get more exhausting soon. The young heir suggests his brother-in-law place his trust in the Peng clan, assuring him they are fully capable of providing all the support he needs. He asks if his brother-in-law would not like to be truly free, even if he chooses not to rule or hold power over others. The prota reflects deeply on that concept of living free without needing to exercise power over anyone else. The heir vows he will always stand by his side as family, firmly stating they need no other reason beyond that. Sometime later, the scene shifts to a gorgeous sunny autumn afternoon in the grand main courtyard of the clan estate. Two servants whisper about the dreaded guests who are about to arrive, remarking that the rumors surrounding them are awful. Two maids complain about having to treat troublemakers as guests, surprised that the patriarch is allowing them inside at all. One of the palace advisors asks the patriarch directly if he truly intends to receive those new visitors. The patriarch asks if the advisor still opposes it, reminding him that everyone knows full well the terrible deeds they have committed. The man reveals that these visitors belong to the dreaded Sarim Squad, an elite force of warriors from the Martial Alliance. He explains the group consists of exceptional talents trained specifically to confront the feared Black Gate of the unorthodox faction. They travel under the guise of final training, yet rumors say one of the members publicly humiliated the head of a prominent family. The advisor adds in a worried tone that the troublemaker violently broke both arms of that clan leader's son. He goes on to say that major clans suffered from the chaos they caused, and smaller clans endured even worse damages. The advisor suggests turning them away at the last minute, but Mugang decides to stick to the original plan and welcome them normally. The patriarch states he gave his word, and turning them away now would only bring far more annoying, exhausting headaches to the clan. The patriarch steps forward with resolve, choosing to simply keep a close eye on the behavior of that group of youths. He positions himself high up on the palace lookout to see just how far those insolent troublemakers plan to push their antics. The palace butler cordially welcomes the visitors at the main gate, thanking them for the journey and showing them the way inside. One of the servants watches the group from the corner of his eye with deep concern, thinking to himself that they have finally arrived. The mysterious and dreaded Sarim Squad marches forward in their elegant robes toward the main courtyard of the grand estate. Guaxadu mocks the clan, saying he hopes the patriarch is more entertaining than his heir, whom he found weak and tacky. However, Yu Wuntak reminds his teammates that, according to rumors, the Ping clan managed to defeat the demon of extreme evil. Guak Sedu asks who the smiling demon of extreme evil is, prompting Yeon So-yi to call him ignorant, until Jo Min tells them both to quiet down. The leader of the Sarim Squad, Jo Min, explains that people capable of providing guidance reside here, ordering everyone to stay quiet and hurry up. Guak Sedu sarcastically agrees, while the clan servant guides the group in silence, visibly uncomfortable. A young maid tries to reassure the little lady, saying it does not matter if she misses the kick on the ball. Soil says that if she misses, her maid Mimi will have to fetch the ball, but confidently guarantees she will do great on the kick. Soil yells as she kicks the ball with her eyes closed, and Mimi laughs, saying she should not close her eyes when kicking. Yeon So-ye finds Soil adorable, while Guak Se-du asks who she is, sending the clan guide into a panic at the scene. The guide reveals the little girl is Soil, the clan patriarch's granddaughter, leaving Jo Min thoughtful about her identity. Jo Min thinks for a second, and cynically asks if it would be alright for him to head over and meet her up close. The clan guide stammers in fear and tries to stop him, reminding him that the patriarch is already waiting for them in the main hall. The guide suggests they speak with the leader first, but is cut off by a harsh gesture accusing him of being out of line. Yeon So-ye says they are just going to greet the leader's granddaughter and questions how a mere servant dares stand in their path. Guak Se-du grabs the servant by the collar and asks if he is afraid of ending up just like No Du-pyong's son. Another squad member mocks him, warning that if he has heard the rumors, he ought to know his place and crawl. Suddenly, Guak Se-du gets hit squarely in the face by a red ball while holding on to the clan servant. Yeon So-ye and the other warrior are also hit by toys right after, left completely taken aback. Jo Min reacts swiftly and manages to snatch the red ball out of the air before it strikes him. Furious at seeing the cruelty toward the servant, little Soil stomps her foot and yells at them to stop immediately. She shouts that they are hurting the servant and calls them wicked monsters for doing such a thing. Yeon So-ye gets extremely ticked off at being called a monster and snaps back at the insolent little girl. Without hesitation, she flicks Soil right on the forehead, making the little girl cry out in pain from the sudden sting. Yeon So-ye tells her to count herself lucky for being cute, while her teammate thinks she actually held back a lot. The pain and shock are far too much for little Soil, who bursts into loud tears right in the middle of the courtyard. Yeon So-ye senses someone massive approaching from behind and looks over, startled by the overwhelming presence. The colossal Gu Tae-san looms behind her and asks in a deeply intimidating voice what on earth she thinks she is doing to the little one. Guak Se-du mocks Gu Tae-san's size and questions if this is how the clan treats its guests, but the warrior simply repeats the word back. Gutai-san menacingly warns that they need to actually act like guests if they want to be treated with dignity as such. Guak Se-do is enraged by the pushback and asks if that low-ranking brawler is trying to pick a fight with him. Amidst all that intense tension, Jo-min begins calmly clapping his hands to draw everyone's focus. Jo-min calls for calm, saying it would be troublesome if a misunderstanding escalated, but Gute-san remains wary of his words. Oh-chae-moo introduces himself as the vice commander of the White Wolf unit, demanding an explanation for laying hands on the clan's family. Jo-min smiles, acknowledging them as the renowned White Wolf unit members and apologizing for not recognizing them sooner. He proposes clearing up the misunderstanding later and suggests settling the matter in a manner more fitting for martial artists. Wearing a pleasant smile, Jo-min challenges the warriors to a friendly sparring match, catching the vice commander off guard. Jo-min says he wants to spar with those who defeated the supreme evil, but Oh-chae-moo realizes the youth is sly and dragged them into his pace. Oh-chae-moo knows this is an obvious trap and that if he falls for it, he will have no face left to look his commander in the eye later. Meanwhile, Mimi tries to comfort little Soil, and the poor clan guide weeps in desperation over all this chaos. Seeing no other honorable way to defend the clan's name right now, Oh-chae-moo accepts the challenge through gritted teeth. He takes a firm stance and confirms that they will indeed hold that duel right there in the courtyard. The scene shifts to the main hall of the Peng clan, where the heir rushes in and asks his father if he is not concerned. Mugang sips his tea peacefully, saying they are just a few worms crawling around, so there is zero reason for worry. The young heir thinks his father is being far too optimistic and asks if he has another plan behind letting the squad inside. Mugang praises his son's sharp mind, but says he does not need to know just yet until a servant bursts in screaming for them. The patriarch asks what is going on while the servant struggles to catch his breath to speak. Upon hearing the shocking news of what went down in the courtyard, Mugang slams the table hard and lets out a roar of pure rage. His veins bulge with fury upon learning that, on top of striking the servant, those insolent brats dared to do something far worse. He roars furiously, demanding to know what kind of lunatics laid a hand on Yule, while the heir tries to calm him down to go check first. The patriarch refuses to wait and shouts with all his might that the two of them will go settle this matter together right now. The youth insists his father's presence will only escalate things and decides to head over first, making the patriarch reluctantly back down. Left alone in the hall, Mugang takes a deep breath and tries to steady himself after the massive shock and wave of rage that nearly made him lose control. Mugang still grumbles furiously at their audacity. While out in the courtyard, the Sarim squad leader thanks the warriors for agreeing to the spar. He proposes they fight one-on-one in turns, kicking off the match with a spirit of friendly exchange between both sides. Oh-chae-moo tells Gutai-san to take it easy since it is just sparring, and the big guy casually agrees. Gutai-san steps into the courtyard, saying he will hold back and asks who will be the first to face him. Guak Se-do steps forward with his saber in hand, introducing himself as the representative of the Sarim squad. He offers a formal bow of respect and asks his opponent to guide him during this bout. Gutai-san takes his combat stance as well and agrees to kick off the exchange of blows against the young man. Wasting no time, the two initiate the clash with swift and decisive weapon strikes. Guak Se-do leaps forward with a direct slash, but Gutai-san firmly halts the impact using his heavy saber. Guak Se-do grits his teeth in frustration, realizing just how rock-solid and unbreakable his opponent's guard is. Gutai-san retaliates with a mighty swing that hurls Guak Se-do backward, leaving the youth coughing heavily. Guak Se-do braces himself against the ground, complaining that it feels like hitting a massive boulder instead of a human being. Jo-min stares coldly at his fallen comrade and asks if he is actually fighting seriously out there. He orders the youth to fight as if defeat belonged to the martial alliance itself, demanding that he not bring shame upon their master. Guak Se-do tightens his grip on his weapon's hilt in pure anger and confirms he understands his leader's order. Jo-min apologizes to his opponents and requests they resume the bout, with Guak Se-do standing back up ready to reset. The youth rushes toward Gutai-san with even greater fury and leaps up to unleash another devastating aerial strike. Guak Se-do's eyes flash brightly as he channels a lethal crimson aura into his blade. Tae-san senses the drastic shift in his opponent and notices with shock that he is tapping into real killing intent. With an exceptionally swift and ruthless motion, the young warrior's attack cuts straight through the opponent's defense. Silence blankets the courtyard as blood begins dripping straight from the tip of the enemy's sword. Gutai-san is utterly stunned by the violent strike, noticing blood pouring from a deep gash on his neck. The twins, Gisu and Gisayang, along with Oh Chai-mu, watch that dreadful scene with looks of sheer disbelief. Gute-san falls unconscious onto the stone floor while his comrades scream his name in utter desperation. Oh Chai-mu holds his friend and shouts in fury, demanding to know why the opponent targeted a vital spot during a simple spar. Yeon So-yi scoffs at their reaction, saying it is just a scratch, but Jo-min sternly orders her to be quiet. Jo-min bows in feigned respect and offers sincere apologies for the grave incident that occurred during the fight. He adds with a cynical grin that, when all is said and done, it was not a fatal wound for the warrior. Oh Chai-mu is enraged by the mockery and asks what he just said, but Jo-min sarcastically wonders if his life as a warrior is over. Jo-min suggests continuing the sparring, and Oh Chai-mu calls out the lethal strike, but the youth claims he already apologized for it. Jo-min scoffs with disdain and sarcastically asks how many times they will even need to visit this place anyway. Oh Chai-mu grinds his teeth in sheer rage, thinking about how unbelievably rude and thoroughly unhinged these young visitors are. A calm voice accepts the situation, drawing everyone's focus as steady footsteps approach the sparring grounds. The warriors call out for Commander Yeo Woon-hui, and Jo-min remarks that since he showed up, it is best to proceed with the match. Yeo Woon-hui introduces himself as the commander, and Jo-min falsely praises his sensible attitude in agreeing to continue the training. Jo-min muses that, since they are going through with it, things would be far more thrilling if they tried something different. He stares down the commander with confidence, suggesting the two of them engage in a direct, back-to-back duel right in the courtyard. The prota remarks that his skills are the weakest here, and that he only just picked up the basics, asking him not to worry. Jo-min wonders if he is being mocked by the commander, but accepts the fight proposal nonetheless with lingering suspicion. With a sharp gaze, he draws his sword with resolve and announces that he is more than ready to begin the contest. The two opponents stand face to face in the center of the grand courtyard, under the watchful eyes of everyone present. Jo-min charges swiftly toward the prota, unleashing a rapid frontal slash with his sword. He shouts with everything he has got during the rush, while Yeo Woon-hui stands completely still, merely tracking the blade's path. With effortless ease, the prota dodges the strike and launches the young leader high into the air with a single swift motion. Yeon So-yi and Gwak Se-do are left entirely speechless, unable to fathom how their leader was bested so fast. With his crimson eyes glowing intensely, the commander looks at the rest of the squad and coldly calls for the next one. Jo-min recovers from the hard landing, fuming with rage at being humiliated so effortlessly in front of everyone. Yeon So-ye begins to suspect they hid their true abilities on purpose, just to catch them completely off guard. The twins burst out laughing at the scene and taunt the group, telling them to hurry up since their commander is waiting. Jo-min warns that this commander is bizarre and urges caution, but Gwak Se-do arrogantly claims he is built different from the rest. Jo-min glares at Gwak Se-do with eyes full of fury, thinking to himself that his teammate is nothing but useless trash. Jo-min marches forward with sword in hand, telling himself he is a genius among geniuses and that the commander's strength is irrelevant. He assumes a combat stance and warns his opponent to watch out, as his sword technique is exceptionally fierce. Yeo Woon-hui shrugs, remarking that people lacking skill often talk like that, which leaves Jo-min boiling with inner rage. Jo-min vows he will cripple the commander this very day, rushing toward him wrapped in an aura of brilliant blue energy. From afar, Oh Chai-mu watches the youth's movement technique closely and asks his comrade if he recognizes it. He explains that it is the Eight Clammers sword art, a legendary technique wielded by the Sword Emperor himself. He is deeply impressed by the fact that Jo-min mastered such an unrivaled martial art despite his young age. With that in mind, he warns that even with their commander in the fight, Jo-min is not an opponent to be taken lightly. Jo-min executes an incredibly swift aerial lunge, aiming the energy-infused tip of his blade straight at his opponent. He unleashes a rapid flurry of strikes with his glowing sword, scattering energy blasts all across the battlefield. Yeo Woon-hui evades every single strike with unbelievable agility, wearing a faint smirk across his face. Jo-min leaps back and snaps in irritation, complaining that the commander dodges his attacks in the most annoying way possible. Jo-min channels a massive amount of blue energy into his blade, asking how the opponent will handle his next strike. He leaps high into the air and unleashes his supreme technique, the falling meteor sword art, straight down at the commander below. The technique unleashes a colossal flash of pure energy that slams down with full force right where Yeo Woon-hui stood. Jo-min lands and stands in absolute shock, realizing the commander blocked that entire blast with effortless ease. The young prodigy cannot accept reality, thinking his opponent should already be on his knees begging for his life. Utterly desperate and beside himself, Jo-min screams that this makes no sense and tries to launch another rapid advance. In the blink of an eye, Yeo Woon-hui materializes right before him, calmly announcing that it is finally his turn to strike. Jo-min's eyes widen in sheer terror as he feels the absurd speed and crushing aura of the commander before him. Yeo Woon-hui raises his sword with calm movements, yet radiating a concentrated, terrifying power. Jo-min looks up, completely paralyzed, as a colossal sword-shaped energy projection manifests high in the heavens. The young man's pupils shrink in pure terror before the sheer scale of that devastating might about to crash down on him. The blade of pure energy descends from the skies like a lightning bolt, aiming straight for the desperate Martial Alliance warrior. Jo-min freezes completely still, eyes glazed over and drooling from the overwhelming shock and terror of the incoming strike. The attack halts right before striking him, and the young man drops to his knees on the stone floor, thoroughly broken and drained of all will to fight. Yeo Woon-hui calmly sheathes his weapon and declares that the sparring match is officially over. The White Wolf unit warriors erupt in wild cheers, loudly celebrating their commander's swift and overwhelming victory. Oh Chae-moo congratulates the commander, while Guak Se-du asks about Jo-min's injury, to which he replies pretending everything is fine. Yeon So-yi brings up the terrifying fear she felt, and Jo-min lets out a forced laugh, trying to hide the trembling in his hands. Peng Seo-jin walks over to congratulate his brother-in-law on the win, and Yeo Woon-hui simply replies that it was nothing special. Seo-jin says he will report the spar to the Martial Alliance to boost their renown without exposing his brother-in-law's true power, but the Prota deflects. The Prota states that this time there will be no need for such a report, leaving Jo-min confused as he overhears the remark from afar. Yeo Woon-hui adds that he has a private matter to settle with the young heir, under Jo-min's tense and resentful gaze. Back in his private quarters, Jo-min lets out a furious roar, venting his frustration by smashing the furniture across the room. Panting heavily, he thinks to himself that he will never, ever accept suffering such a humiliating defeat. He orders everyone to pack their things and leave immediately, catching Yeon So-ye off guard by the sudden departure. The other teammate agrees with her, suggesting it would be far better to rest there for another day to properly recover. Jo-min glares at them with an intensely dark, rage-filled look, making it clear he will tolerate zero pushback. Without the slightest warning, he lands a brutal punch squarely on the face of the teammate who dared suggest they stay. He violently slams his comrade to the floor, warning that he will not tolerate anyone talking back to him ever again. He finishes the threat in a chillingly calm voice, swearing he will eliminate the next person who dares disobey his orders. Night falls over the massive clan estate, bringing with it a profound silence and an intensely heavy atmosphere. Under the cover of night, the Sareem squad begins quietly pulling out from the Hebei Peng clan estate. Jo-min walks at the front, casting one last bitter glance behind him before crossing the palace boundaries. The group journeys onward and soon vanishes into the roadside fog, leaving behind all the humiliation they endured. However, atop the roof of one of the pavilions, someone keeps a watchful eye on the silent departure of the young warriors. It is Commander Yeo Woon-hui tracking their path from above with his arms crossed in deep contemplation. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to the outskirts of a dense, dark forest, where the rhythmic sound of footsteps begins to echo. Jo-min walks through the dark woods, still lost in his thoughts regarding the humiliating clash he just experienced. He wonders what that man's true identity could be, recalling that he has never felt such immense pressure and bloodlust in his entire life. The young man admits to himself that, even for a brief second before that power, he felt the true chill of his end drawing near. He bitterly reflects on how his opponent managed to make him feel so utterly pathetic and completely helpless. He tries to brush those thoughts aside, concluding that everything is fine as long as their paths never cross again in the future. Jo-min puts on a fake smile, trying to convince himself that his bright, promising future as a genius remains completely secure. Suddenly, small black spheres begin rolling across the damp forest floor, right in front of the group of young warriors. Jo-min looks down in terror upon spotting the mysterious objects, feeling an instant shiver run down his entire spine. The spheres burst, releasing a cloud of purple poison gas, and Jo-min frantically screams for everyone to hold their breath immediately. Amidst the haze under the full moon's glow, shadowy silhouettes appear, cackling sinisterly at the youth's desperate plight. A bizarre figure with markings across his forehead steps forward grinning, remarking that they have finally tracked down the Sareem squad. Upon spotting the dreadful skull insignia on the intruder's robes, Jo-min begins to suspect the true origin of that shadowy crew. He realizes in sheer dread that this is the Black Execution Unit of the demon cult. While the enemy thanks them for leaving so early, the mysterious man proudly claims that his unit is the demon cult's most formidable weapon and greatest source of pride. Jo-min coughs from the gas, panicking as he realizes no one can tap into their inner energy due to the poison's paralyzing effect. One of the squad warriors trembles uncontrollably with fear upon confirming the presence of the wicked faction right there in the forest. Overcome by blind panic, Guak Si-do dashes off into the woods, while Jo-min yells in vain for him to fall back with the group. However, a lightning-fast blade emerges from the shadows, striking the runner through the back before he can even make his escape. Watching the youth collapse lifelessly, the enemy leader mocks the Martial Alliance prodigies, claiming even a dog would laugh at their failure. Jo-min realizes the intruders want to squeeze something out of them and focuses his entire mind on finding a way to make it out alive. He coldly thinks to himself that even if every single one of his teammates falls here, he at least must save his own skin. The youth asks directly what they want, and the enemy leader grins, praising his quick wits in handling the situation. The wicked elder offers to spare only one single person who agrees to hand over Alliance secrets and serve as their mole. He warns that the chosen one will be branded and given a special poison, leaving the remaining warriors completely frozen. Yeon So-ye tries to stammer out a terrified response, but is instantly cut off by someone stepping up to volunteer. Jo-min steps forward with a smirk and offers himself, arguing that as squad leader, he will be far more useful than the others. His teammate lunges at Jo-min in pure rage, grabbing him from behind and screaming furiously over his cowardly betrayal. Jo-min coldly shrugs him off and tells the enemy leader he has just one single condition before sealing the deal. With an unhinged, merciless gaze, the youth points at his own allies and asks the enemies to make them disappear on the spot. His partner stands in sheer disbelief, but the elder lets out an evil cackle and accepts the request, saying he was going to do that anyway. Yeon So-ye screams in desperation, calling Jo-min useless trash and swearing with pure hatred that he will surely burn for this. The lifeless bodies of the two collapse onto the damp forest floor, and the enemy leader beckons the young traitor forward to seal the pact. The elder mockingly pats Jo-min on the head, praising him for being a very clever kid for an Alliance prodigy. He informs the youth that from this moment on, his life belongs to the Black Unit, ordering him to prove his real worth right here. Jo-min offers a submissive bow, promising to obey every command and proving he made the right choice to survive. However, drops of blood suddenly splatter across Jo-min's face, causing his eyes to widen in total shock at what just occurred. In a swift, brutal motion from the shadows, a mysterious warrior appears, violently cutting through the demon cult members. Jo-min freezes in pure dread as the brilliant golden gleam of a mighty sword cuts through the air right before his wide eyes. Devastating golden arcs slash through the dark forest, wiping out the Black Unit assassins in a matter of seconds. Yo-woon-hui steps out from the shadows, noting he made the exact choice expected of him, while Jo-min recognizes him with even greater terror. The Prota points out that had the young man held on to his principles and honor until the end, his fate would have been entirely different. Desperate, Jo-min begins weeping and screaming that this is not fair, claiming he did all of that solely to stay alive. The truth about Jo-min comes to light, revealing that in his past life he also betrayed the Orthodox faction to become a ruthless cultist. The Prota reflects that he had hoped for a different choice, saying that while it feels unfair to him, reality simply is what it is. With a cold, unyielding gaze, Yo-woon-hui slowly raises his fingers to deliver the final mercy strike to the traitor. He declares that everyone must take full responsibility for their own choices in life, bringing an end to his opponent. Seo-jin suggests making it look like the Black Unit and the squad wiped each other out in a fierce life-or-death clash right there. Yo-woon-hui agrees with his brother-in-law's idea, promising he will arrange the entire scene to look precisely like that. Seo-jin wonders if staging this will end up turning the dreadful Sarum squad into fallen heroes of the Orthodox Murim. The commander explains that exposing the betrayal would ruin the Alliance's prestige, preferring to keep the secret even if he dislikes the idea. The Prota looks at Jo-min's lifeless body with a dagger embedded in his forehead, reflecting that such supposed honor means nothing to the fallen. Peng Seo-jin accepts his brother-in-law's call, but wonders thoughtfully how the traitor knew they would be targeted by that covert unit. He questions how Jo-min foresaw the demon cult assassins appearing and the fact that they would fall so easily into temptation. Seo-jin gazes at Yo-woon-hui with curiosity, quietly wondering what kind of mysterious dark past his brother-in-law is hiding. Elsewhere, the quiet atmosphere is broken by the sound of a brush painting on a canvas as someone asks in disbelief what the servant just said. The local lord questions whether both forces truly wiped each other out completely, and the trembling servant confirms the report is accurate. He grows irritated, asking if it makes any sense for elite warriors to be taken down by mere inexperienced Alliance rookies. He rants that the loss of the unit's top brass on such a pointless mission is an absolute disgrace and dishonor for the demon cult. Having zero patience for his servant's excuses, the master raises his right hand with disdain, grumbling that this whole ordeal is beyond annoying. Suddenly, the messenger begins choking under a crushing invisible grip, his eyes bulging in sheer panic as he runs out of breath. The poor messenger collapses lifelessly onto the grand hall floor after having his neck ruthlessly broken without any chance to defend himself. The master clicks his tongue in pure disgust, concluding that something very strange and completely off script definitely went down in that clan courtyard. The white-haired elder folds his arms with deep seriousness, confessing he is extremely eager to find out what kind of wretch dared pull this off. If you want the next part, drop a like and leave a comment.